Everyone knows that Blanche only became Alston's girlfriend because Judith went abroad. Everyone is also waiting to watch the drama unfold, waiting to see the spectacle of Judith returning and Blanche being dumped by Alston. But no one knows that Blanche is also waiting for the day Alston says they're through. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my channel. Subscribe us to read wonderful novels every day. Now the story begins. At 5:30 in the afternoon, the Civil Affairs Bureau. After the last divorcing couple left, a staff member approached Blanche with sympathetic eyes. Hello, we're closing soon. The person you're waiting for still hasn't arrived. Blanche tightened her grip on the marriage application form in her hand and whispered, just a moment, let me make one last call. She took out her phone and called Alston. The call screen already showed 12 missed calls, and this last one was no exception. It too was rejected. Blanche silently closed her phone, uttered an apology, and walked out of the Civil Affairs office. The moment the office door closed behind her, she froze in her tracks. In the next instant, she raised her hand and tore up the marriage application in her grip, tossing it into the trash. This was Alston's third time standing her up on their wedding registration day, and the last. She loved Alston, but she wasn't some pitiful creature without self-respect. Alston, loving you ends here. After getting into the taxi, Blanche opened her social media feed. She saw that Alston and her mutual friend had just posted a moment. Joy at the return of an old friend, happiness beyond words. Welcome back, Judith, the future is bright. In the photo, Alston, whom she hadn't been able to reach all day, was unmistakably seated among them, and right beside him was Judith, his first love, his childhood sweetheart, and once Blanche's closest friend. The three of them grew up together. But now Judith returned to the country without telling her. Blanche took a deep breath and then gave the social media post a like. Before she could react, another message from her boss popped up. The case is yours now. Blanche immediately perked up. After replying with a single okay, she looked up at the driver. Sorry, could we change course and head to DT accounting firm? CHS case involved hundreds of millions, rather than going home to be alone. She preferred returning to the office to work overtime. It wasn't until 10 p.m., when the city lights began to glow, Blanche finally left the office and hailed a cab home. The house was pitch black and eerily quiet. Blanche had long grown accustomed to such scenes. After washing up, she prepared to sleep. Unexpectedly, the doorbell suddenly rang. Blanche had no choice but to get up and answer the door. The moment she opened it, she froze in surprise. Alston was seen completely drunk. Now leaning against Judith, Blanche felt a sharp pang in her chest at this sight. After a few seconds of silence, she finally said to Judith, long time no see, long time no see. Judith also smiled, casually asking, why didn't you come to my welcome party today? Judith still carried her usual aloof demeanor. Dressed in a white dress with long, straight black hair, Blanche maintained her usual tone as she said, today was supposed to be the day Alston and I got our marriage license. The surrounding air froze for an instant. Judith flickered her gaze, then put on an apologetic expression. Then I'm sorry, I must have delayed you. It's all right, it's not a big deal anyway. Blanche glanced at Alston, thinking calmly, after all, she had no intention of going through with this marriage. She took a step back, making room. Would you like to come in and sit for a while? Judith paused, then politely declined. No, I just returned to the country and have many things to attend to. Alston is in your hands now. Alston gets headaches when he's drunk. Remember to brew him hangover tea tomorrow morning, and add extra honey. She stopped mid-sentence and smiled meaningfully. Oh, I forgot you're his girlfriend now. You must already know all this, right? Judith's words pricked Blanche's heart like thorns. Of course she knew. These little details about Alston were things she'd memorized perfectly over the past decade of her secret crush on him. Blanche didn't lose her composure. Instead, she smiled. How rare that someone who abandoned Alston just for an offer from a foreign research institute still remembers his preferences so clearly. Judith froze. Blanche closed the door and helped Alston into the bedroom. After wetting a towel in the bathroom, she had just wiped Alston's face when he opened his eyes. The next moment, Alston's scorching kiss came crashing down. Blanche wanted to resist. But Alston's strength was so overwhelming that she couldn't break free. In the bedroom, the dim yellow light cast the shadows of two tightly entwined figures. Blanche unconsciously dug her nails into Alston's lean back muscles. Alston winced in pain and murmured deliriously by her ear, Judith, stop messing around. Blanche froze abruptly. Amidst the unbearable stabbing pain in her chest, she weakly closed her eyes and endured in silence. After it was over, Blanche glanced at the sleeping Alston lying beside her, forced herself up, and swallowed a contraceptive pill she fished out from the nightstand. Her stomach burned like fire, but she felt nothing else as she lay beside Alston, drifting into a deep sleep after who knows how long. The next day, the alarm rang, and Blanche woke up to find the space beside her already empty. She quickly got up to wash, only to bump into Alston, who was about to leave. He stood perfectly straight, dressed in an immaculate suit, his eyes calm and unreadable. "Remember to take your medicine." Blanche froze. My heart was suddenly wrenched again. She didn't say she'd already eaten, casually replying, "Sure." He didn't want her child. As it happened, she didn't want to bear his child now either. Alston having gotten his answer, he was about to leave when he suddenly remembered something. "I had something come up yesterday and forgot to go get our marriage license with you. We'll make time to go again later." This was already Blanche the third time she had heard those words come from his mouth. She had nothing to say, so she simply replied, "All right, whenever you're free." This more composed attitude than expected made Alston stare at her for a moment before he ultimately said nothing and walked out the door. Blanche went straight to the administrative supervisor as soon as she arrived at the office. "You don't need to approve my marriage leave anymore." The administrative supervisor looked at her in surprise. "What's wrong? Aren't you getting married? Did the wedding get rescheduled?" Blanche shook her head and replied, "No, I'm not getting married anymore." Seeing the supervisor's astonished expression, she handed over a stack of documents. "And by the way, I've applied for a long-term assignment in Germany. I'll be leaving next month." The administrative supervisor was even more surprised and repeatedly confirmed, "Are you sure? You have no foundation there at all. Going there would mean starting over completely." Blanche smiled, looking completely serious. "The senior executive positions here are saturated. If I want to move up, don't I have to start over?" After leaving the administrative director's office, Blanche returned to her own office, opened the case file, and began working carefully. By the time she got off work, it was already 9 o'clock. Blanche had just arrived home when she saw Alston writing something intently on his tablet. His sleeves were casually rolled up, revealing his sturdy forearms. Seeing Blanche return, Alston closed his tablet and calmly looked at her. "Judith has returned to the country. Did you know?" "I know." Blanche met his gaze calmly. "Yesterday when you were drunk, it was she who brought you back." Alston paused. But then she slightly raised an eyebrow and sidestepped the topic, simply saying, "In a few days it's Judith's birthday, and she wants to invite you to her party." Blanche stared at him steadily and asked, "If she wants to invite me, why are you the one telling me?" Alston replied matter-of-factly, "She's working at my research institute now, so it was just convenient." Blanche curled the corner of her lips, but a trace of indescribable mockery surfaced in her eyes. She clearly remembered. 5 years ago when Judith went abroad, Alston had sworn never to work with her again in this lifetime. Now that she's back, it's as if those words were never spoken. Blanche couldn't be bothered to dredge up old grievances. With a simple "got it," she decisively ended the conversation. A few days later, on Judith's birthday, Alston had disappeared early in the morning. Blanche, after washing up, she went to the dressing room to change clothes, staring at the closet full of white dresses. She suddenly froze in a daze. She suddenly realized that all these years, she had loved so humbly, even to the point of unconsciously imitating Judith. Judith loved wearing white, so she followed suit, even though what she truly adored was dazzling red. Now that she had resolved to leave, she might as well start with her dresses. Blanche rummaged through the depths of her wardrobe and pulled out an old dress from 5 years ago, a fiery red fishtail skirt that perfectly accentuated her slender waist. Staring at the familiar yet unfamiliar reflection in the mirror, she pinned up her straight hair and applied bold red lipstick. At noon, Blanche arrived punctually at the agreed meeting place. Just as I reached the private room door, I heard a sharp voice from inside. "What, Judith? You actually invited Blanche? Why would you invite her? Does she even understand what we're talking about?" "Exactly, she's just an ordinary undergrad, while all of us here are graduate students. If it weren't for Alston's sake, she wouldn't even qualify to step through the door of our gathering." "Alston, now that Judith is back too, give us a straight answer. Between Judith and Blanche, who are you really choosing?" Blanche paused mid-step. She certainly knew Alston's circle didn't welcome her. Alston was the leading figure among the younger generation of theoretical physicists in the country, the youngest professor at Tsinghua and Peking University. His colleagues also prided themselves as highbrow intellectuals, always looking down on her academic background, believing she couldn't compare to Judith and wasn't worthy of standing by Alston's side. In truth, she didn't think she fell short in any way, but for the sake of Alston's social connections. She had always endured what she could in the past. Now, she no longer had any reason to hold back. Blanche took a deep breath, pushed the door open, and walked in. When the people inside saw her, they showed no trace of embarrassment at being caught gossiping. Instead, they teased, "Oh, Blanche is here. We were just joking around." Amidst the muffled laughter, Blanche also curled her lips into a smile. "It is quite funny. I wonder if your annual salary combined even matches my monthly bonus. How can you live with such confidence?" The entire private room fell into stunned silence, everyone staring in shock at this person who had always endured teasing without uttering a single word. The man who had just spoken turned alternately pale and red with embarrassment. Alston lifted his eyes to glance at Blanche and spoke coldly. "Blanche, this kind of joke isn't funny." Blanche also looked toward Alston. When others made jokes at her expense, he paid no attention. When she retorted, he would finally speak. At its core, it was simply because he shared the same views as these people. He also looked down upon Blanche's education, believed she couldn't compare to Judith, and even thought he was settling for her. Blanche felt a tightness in her chest when she saw Judith approach with a beaming smile to mediate. Oh dear, Blanche has always had such a temper since childhood. Everyone should just let it go. This green tea speech reeks so strongly it could choke someone. Given Blanche's usual temper, she would have likely started arguing with Judith right away, but strangely, after making the decision to let go of Alston, she couldn't even be bothered to engage with Judith anymore. Blanche chuckled and sat down. "Yes, who made me so hot-tempered anyway?" Judith was most surprised that Blanche didn't even pick a fight with her. It wasn't until Blanche had been seated for quite some time that the others at the table resumed conversation. Someone even deliberately remarked loudly, "Your research project is a national-level program this time, with funding in the tens of millions, not like certain people who make their money through shady means." Blanche couldn't be bothered to argue with these people anymore. After all, she wouldn't be seeing them again after this. But as she watched Alston, who remained indifferent to her words, she couldn't help but sneer inwardly, pitying herself for a few seconds. Once the meal began, Judith had just picked up a spicy chicken wing when Alston frowned and said, "You can't eat spicy food. Do you want to ruin your stomach?" Alston was utterly clueless about daily life. For every little thing, Blanche had to write him a sticky note telling him what to do. A person so indifferent to all worldly matters, yet he still remembers every habit of Judith. Blanche had no appetite to begin with, and now couldn't eat another bite. When the gathering ended, Alston rushed to pay the bill first. They walked ahead while Blanche followed behind. Blanche suddenly remembered that before Judith went abroad, the three of them used to interact exactly like this. Later, Judith went abroad, and Blanche finally became Alston's girlfriend. She moved from behind Alston to finally stand by his side. She thought she had changed everything, but it turned out that as long as Judith returned to the country, everything would revert to how it was. As the three of them reached the hotel entrance, Alston looked earnestly at Judith and asked, "Is someone coming to pick you up?" Judith nodded and replied, "My brother will be here soon." At that moment, a car pulled up at the entrance. As the car door opened, a child rushed toward Judith, exclaiming, "Auntie, happy birthday." The next moment, the child spotted Alston and cooed, "Uncle, you haven't visited me in so long." Blanche froze for a moment. Alston instinctively glanced at Blanche, but first lowered his head to pat the child's hair, then reminded Judith, "Text me when you get home." Judith nodded at him, then gave Blanche another look. There was no gloating in her eyes, yet it seemed to tell Blanche, "See, even after 5 years apart, my bond with Alston is something you can't compare to." After watching the car drive away, Alston finally turned back to Blanche and said, "Let's go." Blanche paused briefly before following his steps. Once they got into the car, Alston explained, "I used to be quite close to that kid. I didn't expect Judith never told him we broke up." Blanche turned to look at him upon hearing this. With no lights on in the car, she could only see half his face hidden in shadows, the other half too dim to discern his expression. Blanche pondered his explanation, but ultimately could only let out a light chuckle. The one who misunderstood was that child. Just now, Alston could have explained everything clearly with just one sentence, yet he chose not to, and now he comes to explain it to me instead. Isn't that just laughable? Blanche turned her head to look out the window. Alston received no response and looked at her, his gaze involuntarily lingering on her vibrant red dress. Frowning immediately, he then said, "Also, don't wear red dresses anymore, they don't suit you." Blanche trembled at his words. Was it that she didn't look good in a red dress? Or that Alston only liked her dressed like Judith? Blanche closed her eyes and fell silent. Alston, seeing her silence, also turned cold-eyed and stared ahead without a word. Upon returning home, Blanche went straight to the study. She was about to go to Germany soon, so naturally, she needed to learn German well. Fortunately, she had some prior knowledge of the language, so picking it up again wasn't too difficult. She didn't hide her studies from Alston, but he didn't ask either. Seeming completely indifferent to what she was doing, the next day, CHS case officially reached a preliminary agreement in its first phase. Blanche seized the opportunity to host a cocktail party, inviting many from the financial circle. It turned out to be a great success, and for the first time, she got drunk at the event. Blanche's friend Lambert frowned and asked, "Why didn't you stop her? Now she's really drunk. What should we do?" The others exchanged glances, clueless. Does Blanche have a boyfriend? Probably not. Why not give that guy a chance? He likes Blanche. Let him take her home. Lambert clicked his tongue lightly and was about to escort Blanche home himself when her phone rang. The name on the screen read Alston. Lambert answered and put it on speakerphone. A detached male voice immediately came through. "Blanche, where are you? Why aren't you home yet?" The man's words were cold, but they confirmed his identity. Blanche really has a boyfriend. Everyone was shocked. Only Lambert frowned at the coldness in the man's voice and spoke up. "Hello, I'm Blanche's colleague. She's drunk now, could you come pick her up?" The line went silent for a moment. The man's voice abruptly turned icy. "Address." Someone quickly recited the address before the call was abruptly ended. The colleagues were even more astonished, whispering among themselves, "For years, I've never heard that Blanche had a boyfriend." Exactly. Blanche has worked overtime so many times, yet no one's ever come to pick her up. Only Lambert glanced at the flushed-faced Blanche and sighed inexplicably. Alston arrived at the venue to find Blanche half-sober, staring blankly into space from the sofa. Alston walked up to her, but she just stared back at him. Speechless, Alston quickly and carefully scrutinized her before coldly questioning, "Was it necessary? Was it necessary to drink to this extent for a job?" Blanche felt dazed but instinctively wanted to retort, "Of course it's necessary," yet sensing Alston's displeasure, she held back from arguing and simply tugged at his sleeve, mumbling coquettishly, "Let's go home." Alston felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest. After nodding at Lambert, who was eyeing him curiously, he scooped up Blanche and carried her away. Once in the car, Blanche immediately fell asleep in the passenger seat. Alston unconsciously glanced over. Seeing she was wearing a white blouse under her trench coat today, his furrowed brows instantly relaxed. Indeed, this looked much better. At least it was more pleasing than red, not nearly as alluring. After returning home, Alston led Blanche into the bathroom, intending to sober her up, but she pulled him down by his tie. Messy kisses landed on his face and Adam's apple. Alston had desire surging in his eyes, finally unable to hold back any longer. He pressed one hand against the back of her head and kissed her back. Everything returned to calm. Blanche lay on the bed, her mind finally clear, yet her body lacked even the strength to turn over. Alston emerged leisurely from the bathroom, his expression uncharacteristically gentle, perhaps satisfied. Suddenly, his phone rang. Seeing Judith's name on the caller ID, he immediately answered the call. Suddenly, Judith's panicked voice came through. "Alston, I accidentally burned the pot while cooking, and now it's on fire. What should I do?" Alston abruptly changed expression. "I'm coming right now." After hanging up, he went to change clothes. Seeing Blanche staring intently at him, he instinctively offered an excuse. "There's an emergency at the research institute. I need to go out. Don't wait up for me tonight." Without waiting for Blanche's reaction, he quickly changed and rushed out the door. With a click of the door, the house fell silent once more. Blanche remained speechless, simply closing her eyes in embarrassment. They had just been intimate, the warmth still lingering, yet he couldn't wait to rush off to another woman. She had no idea how much time had passed. Blanche's phone rang as well. She picked it up and saw it was the same person, Judith. Blanche suddenly had an intuition that this was Judith's way of putting her in her place. Listening to the ringing, she finally pressed the answer button. And Judith's affectionate voice came through the phone. "Alston, let's make up. You still love me, don't you? Otherwise, you wouldn't have come to me from Blanche's side just because of one phone call." Blanche's breath hitched. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the phone. Alston's hoarse voice still came through clearly. "I do still love you." The next instant, the call was hung up on the other end. The cold glow of the phone screen illuminated Blanche's deathly pale face. At this moment, Blanche didn't even know whether to grieve over Judith being abandoned without hesitation by Alston after just one phone call, or to grieve over how Alston could forgive Judith again and again, even when she chose her future over him. Lying quietly in bed, Blanche recalled something she thought she had long forgotten. It happened during Judith's first year abroad, the same year Alston won his first major award in the physics world. Blanche happily carried flowers, intending to surprise him backstage at the awards ceremony, but overheard a conversation between Alston and his classmate. "You and Judith won the big award with your project. Aren't you going to use this chance to go abroad and win her back? Don't tell me you plan to stay with Blanche from now on. Blanche isn't good enough for you, apart from her pretty face." After Alston remained silent for a long time, he finally replied, "I'll think about it." The next day, he lied to Blanche, saying, "I'm going abroad for an academic conference and will be back in a week." Even though Blanche was already Alston's girlfriend by then, she didn't dare to ask him directly, "Are you going to see Judith?" She didn't dare to ask, afraid that asking would lead to a breakup. Blanche could only say with reddened eyes, "I'll wait for you to come back." Blanche endured for a week, finally waiting for Alston to return to the country. That day, Alston, who never drank, got completely drunk. He leaned Blanche's shoulder, murmuring drunkenly, "Blanche, from now on it's just the two of us. You won't leave me, right?" Blanche remembered how her heart ached beyond words at that moment. Holding Alston, she promised, "I won't leave you." Once those words were spoken, she kept them for 5 years. Blanche always thought she could persevere until the clouds parted and the moon appeared, but she never expected to grow weary before that day ever came. At this very moment, Blanche had slightly reddened eyes and finally let out a sigh. "Alston, I'm sorry, but I must break my promise." She was going to leave him. His love, she no longer wanted it. The next morning, Blanche went to the office, only to learn that the leadership from Germany had come to Beijing for an inspection that day, and after the inspection, they suddenly got the whim to climb the Great Wall. Blanche, as an employee about to be transferred to Germany, had no choice but to join them. She climbed for several hours, barely making it halfway up. Sitting on the stairs panting heavily, a bottle of water was suddenly handed to me. Looking up, it was actually Alston. Blanche was completely stunned. Thinking it must be a hallucination, Alston opened the water and helped her take a few sips before she finally caught her breath and asked, "Why are you here?" Alston didn't answer, but instead introduced Blanche to the man beside him. "This is my girlfriend, Blanche." Then he introduced the man to Blanche, a researcher from Shandong province, Chase. Blanche extended her hand and smiled politely. "Hello." Chase shook his hand back with a beaming smile. "Wow, Alston. Your girlfriend is so beautiful, lucky you. By the way, where does she work?" Alston hesitated for a moment before answering vaguely, "Just a small firm." Blanche arched an eyebrow at him. She knew perfectly well that Alston had no idea what her actual workplace was. After 5 years together, she hadn't changed jobs. But did it even matter to Alston? Blanche then filled in the details herself. "I work at DT accounting firm." Chase was startled and suddenly punched Alston. "What are you being so modest for? This is one of the big four's DT. If DT counts as a small firm, then there are no large firms left in the country." Alston paused abruptly. He gave Blanche a complicated look before falling silent. Chase didn't overthink it, brimming with enthusiasm for the hike. "I'll go ahead first. You guys catch up soon." Alston acknowledged with a sound before he left. Only Alston Blanche remained, walking forward at a slow pace. Alston's profile was tense, lost in thought. Blanche sighed and decided to speak plainly. "I work at DT Consulting as a fund manager, responsible for investment and management in the fund sector." Alston lowered his lashes, avoiding her gaze. "Why are you telling me this?" Blanche replied calmly, "Next time you can introduce me to others like this. Rather than just as your girlfriend with nothing else to follow, she is more than just Alston's girlfriend. She is her own person." Alston frowned, his tone tinged with displeasure. "Our work involves completely different fields. How could I possibly know anything about some DT firm?" Blanche fell silent for a moment before smiling with a sigh. "Yes, we're completely from two different worlds." Her smile faded as quickly as it appeared, and she turned her gaze forward where her boss was waving at her. "All right, enough talk. I need to go greet my boss." Blanche quickened her pace and walked ahead. Upon reaching the observation deck, Blanche approached the leader, who then glanced meaningfully at Alston behind her and asked, "Your boyfriend?" Blanche nodded. "Yes," the leader joked, "willing to go to Germany alone, not taking him with you." At this moment, Alston also walked to her side, gazing calmly at the mountains. The contours of his face were deep, not much different from before. Blanche let out a light laugh and was the first to look away. She knew Alston didn't speak German, so now, she openly replied in German right in front of him. Willing to let go. After descending from the Great Wall, Blanche properly saw off the group of officials. Turning around, she saw only Chase left. He pointed to a store and said, "Alston went to buy water." Blanche nodded. Chase, a chatterbox and naturally sociable, struck up another conversation. "Coming here." Climbing the Great Wall was secondary. My main purpose was to conduct the opening tests for the Deep Space Science and Art Museum, a branch of the city's planetarium. It's a project your boyfriend has worked on for 5 years, and it opens tomorrow. You'll definitely come, right? Blanche recalled seeing Alston open the city planetarium website before, and without much thought, simply said, "He didn't tell me about this, and besides, I have a meeting tomorrow afternoon, so I can't get away." Chase was startled, then immediately pulled a ticket from her bag and said breezily, "Oh, he probably just forgot. You're his girlfriend, how can you not come?" Blanche took the ticket, her expression unreadable. When Alston returned, he handed her a bottle of water and casually asked, "What did Chase say to you just now?" Blanche instinctively shook her head. "It's nothing." Early the next morning, Blanche sat on the sofa, watching Alston busily moving about from the moment he got up. He pulled out his high-end tailored suit, reserved only for award ceremonies, and groomed himself meticulously, as if preparing for a wedding. "I have something to attend to today and might be back late." Just as he was about to leave, Alston remembered to say something to her. Clearly, he had no intention of inviting her to the opening ceremony. Blanche felt a slight pang in her heart, then calmly said, "Okay, I wish you a successful opening today." Alston was momentarily stunned. "How did you know?" But before he could finish speaking, his phone rang. He glanced at it and quickly forgot about the matter, answering the call in a gentle and considerate tone. "You're here already. That was quick. I was just thinking of heading out early to pick you up." From the other end of the line came Judith's cool, indistinct voice. The front door at home closed as well. Cutting off the last trace of sound, Blanche took the ticket out of her bag and stared at it for a long time. In the end, she called her assistant and said, "Postpone my afternoon meeting. Something's come up and I can't make it." At 2 in the afternoon, Blanche walked into the planetarium. It had been 5 years since her last visit here. "The last time I came was because Alston was going to confess to Judith at the old planetarium." At that time, Blanche was standing among the onlookers, and no one knew that she had personally arranged the setting for that confession. What about today? Will there be a protagonist for such a grand opening ceremony? The opening ceremony has begun. Blanche found a spot to stand. As the lights came on, Alston stepped onto the stage, tall and upright. He carried an imposing presence as he walked, prompting whispers among many female audience members. Alston took the host's microphone and spoke eloquently. "This popular science art gallery with a deep space theme is a deep space exploration education project jointly created by Beijing City and our Deep Space Exploration Laboratory. This project took me 5 years to complete." As he spoke, his gaze turned to Judith in the audience, his voice carrying a hint of magnetism and tenderness. "I once made a promise with someone to explore the mysteries of the universe together. We missed 5 years, and this art gallery is my reunion gift for her. Judith, thank you for coming today." The audience erupted into applause, everyone deeply moved by the moment. Only Blanche stood frozen amidst the cheering crowd, staring blankly as Alston led Judith onto the stage, where the two embraced under the spotlight. Unable to watch any longer, she turned away only to meet Chase's face, filled with awkwardness. Chase glanced at the still embracing couple on stage, then at Blanche, opening his mouth to speak. But Blanche had already calmly walked past him and left, as if she'd never been there at all. She left the planetarium and returned to the office. Had she known this would happen, she might as well have finished that meeting. After work, Blanche drove home. Just as she parked her car, she saw Alston and Judith strolling under the dim streetlights near the apartment complex, looking like a couple. Right, Blanche remembered. Judith's house after returning home was found by Alston, just in the next unit of their building. Blanche slowly approached and heard their conversation clearly. Then Judith said shyly, "Thank you for the gift, I really like it." And Alston's voice was as gentle as the evening breeze. "Glad you like it." The two of them slowly walked downstairs, and as they said goodbye, Alston watched her go upstairs. Judith didn't move, biting her lower lip before saying, "It's so late, and you still had to walk me home. I'm really sorry about that. If Blanche found out, she'd probably make a fuss with you again." Alston frowned slightly. Judith was secretly pleased with herself when Blanche's cool voice suddenly sounded from behind. "I don't mind." Blanche emerged from under a nearby tree and calmly looked at Judith as she spoke. "Aren't we friends? Walking each other home is no big deal, right?" Judith turned pale then flushed red, forcing a smile with difficulty. "Yes, I was overthinking it." Blanche finally glanced at Alston before walking ahead. Soon, Alston caught up but remained silent, offering no explanation whatsoever. Blanche had just arrived home. Lambert sent a WeChat message, "This Friday. We're throwing you a farewell party, no excuses for not coming. Blanche smiled. She looked up at Alston and asked calmly, I have a gathering this Friday. Would you like to come? Alston was taken aback, visibly surprised. This was the first time Blanche had invited him to one of her gatherings. Meeting her calm, placid gaze, his heart inexplicably skipped a beat, and he found himself agreeing instinctively. All right, I'll be there, on the day of the gathering. Blanche arrived punctually at the venue right after work. Her friends gathered around her reluctantly. Once you're in Germany, it'll be so hard for us to meet again. We'll really miss you. Blanche smiled sincerely and hugged them back. Don't worry, once I make my mark in Germany, I'll bring you over to take care of you. Only then did her friend manage a teary smile. Lambert looked toward the door and asked in confusion, Didn't you say your boyfriend was coming too? Where is he? Blanche was about to speak when Alston's voice sounded from behind. Are we late? Blanche turned to look, her pupils contracting sharply as she saw Alston had indeed arrived, but standing beside him was Judith. The crowd stared at this scene in astonishment. Alston continued to explain unhurriedly, Judith heard we're going to a gathering and wants to join us. Do you mind? Blanche twitched the corner of her mouth. Of course she minded, but Judith was already here, could she really turn her away? Come on in, make yourself at home, Blanche could only say. The farewell dinner was excruciatingly awkward. Alston kept serving Judith dishes in front of her friends, saying, Here, your favorite braised pork ribs with potatoes. Lambert finally couldn't help but sneer, Alston, since your girlfriend can't reach her favorite dishes, why don't you serve her too? To which Alston froze, completely at a loss. Blanche knew full well that he had no idea about her preferences. It's fine. I'll serve myself. She forced an awkward smile and turned the lazy Susan on the table. The meal concluded in an inexplicably strange atmosphere. Lambert, still unwilling to give up, suggested, Now that we're well fed, how about going next door to play a round of werewolf? Blanche froze. She knew Lambert was trying to help her save face, but she was planning to break up with Alston tomorrow. Just as she was about to refuse, she saw Alston nod in agreement. The group marched off to the board game cafe in high spirits. Lambert volunteered to be the narrator. After distributing the roll cards, everyone closed their eyes. The game progressed quickly, and after several rounds, the situation on the field gradually became clear. There are 2 wolves in total on the field. Alston is the seer, who successfully identified the first wolf, leaving one remaining. Blanche is the witch, and after revealing her identity, she successfully survived until the final round with the antidote. Whether it was coincidence or fate remains unknown. In the end, only the 3 of them remained, and naturally, Judith was the werewolf. Blanche looked at Alston and said, You've checked my identity. As long as you vote with me for Judith, we can win this round. Meanwhile, Judith, knowing her identity was exposed and having no defense, simply resorted to acting cute. Alston, I'm really not the werewolf, just believe me this once, okay? Lambert rolled his eyes. All right, let's vote. Blanche and Judith unsurprisingly pointed at each other, then simultaneously turned their gaze toward Alston. Alston pondered for a moment under everyone's scrutiny. He said solemnly, I vote Blanche as the werewolf. Blanche froze in surprise. Before she could react, she heard her friend sneer coldly. Are you kidding me? What's the point of playing like this? Might as well all quit then. Just rely on acting cute to get by. Judith's eyes reddened instantly at these words. With pitiful eyes, she glanced at Alston before addressing the group. I don't know what I did wrong to deserve this treatment. If you don't want to play with me, I'll just leave. With that, she ran out the door. Alston immediately stood up, casting a cold glance at Blanche as he retorted, It's just a game, why make such a big deal out of it? With that, he turned to chase after Judith. Blanche instinctively grabbed his arm. Don't go, all her friends were watching. If Alston just walked away like this, how humiliating would that be for her? Alston flashed a glance, clearly having thought of the same thing. Yet in the end, he still broke free from her grasp and said politely, This meal is on me, everyone. Feel free to order as you like. Then, without hesitation, he turned and walked away. In the end, he chose to leave her behind and went to find Judith. Blanche stared blankly at Alston's retreating figure, her heart filled with desolation. Everyone present fell into silence. Lambert wore an apologetic expression. I'm sorry, Blanche, I never imagined things would end up like this. Blanche snapped out of her daze and forced a smile. It's all right, I know you were standing up for me. But today was supposed to be my farewell gathering anyway. Without them here, we can speak our minds more freely. Don't you think? Under the lights, her eyes were startlingly red, yet she raised her glass with a smile. Cheer up. My leaving is a good thing. You should wish me well, just wish me. She paused in thought before continuing through her tears. May my path ahead be splendid, and may all my wishes come true. Everyone exchanged glances, their eyes quietly reddening. They raised their glasses in unison and clinked them fiercely. May your path ahead be splendid, and may all your wishes come true. After returning home from the party, Blanche received the ticket issuance information for the flight purchased by her company. Dear Ms. Blanche, your flight from Beijing to Germany is scheduled to depart on time at 17:20 on January 24, 2025. Wishing you a safe journey. That would be the day after tomorrow. January 24th, this was the date she would officially leave Alston. Blanche didn't want to dwell on it any longer and simply started packing her luggage. While in the midst of packing, Alston returned home. He didn't mention what happened earlier at the board game cafe. Blanche didn't bring it up either, yet. Alston clearly saw her packing but showed no reaction at all. You go ahead with your work, I'm going to sleep. He didn't care Blanche what she was about to do. Perhaps convinced Blanche would never leave him, hence his fearless arrogance. Or perhaps even if he knew Blanche would leave, he wouldn't care at all. Blanche was packing her things when she suddenly found 2 forgotten theatre blind box tickets buried at the bottom of her bag. She remembered this was a prize she and Alston had won in a lottery at the theatre entrance months ago, a voucher for a free play. They'd long made plans to go together, but then Judith returned to her home country. And everyone forgot about it. Blanche waved the ticket and called back to Alston. Let's use this voucher tomorrow. Alston casually replied, sure. Blanche then put away the ticket, placing it in the most conspicuous spot on the table. After the play, there would truly be no ties left between them. The next day, Blanche and Alston arrived at the theatre, just in time for a classic play adapted from Eileen Chang's Red Rose, White Rose. The most iconic scene in this play was the male protagonist's monologue. He said, every man has 2 women, marry a red rose, and she becomes a mosquito blood stain on the wall, while the white one remains the moonlight before his bed. Marry a white rose, and she becomes a grain of sticky rice on his clothes, while the red one becomes a cinnabar mole over his heart. Blanche was so captivated while reading this passage that her eyes grew moist. She couldn't help but see herself in it. Judith was the white rose in Alston's life, pure and beautiful. As for herself, Blanche couldn't help but look at Alston, only to see him in the dimly lit theatre, completely absorbed in replying to messages on his phone. On the phone screen, Judith's name stabbed at Blanche's heart. What are you doing? I'm so bored. Can you come keep me company? Wait a moment, I'll be right there. Alston quickly replied to the message, then looked up as if sensing something, meeting Blanche's calm face. He asked in confusion, what's wrong? Is the play not good? Blanche shook her head and simply said, it's nothing. She looked towards the stage again, thinking to herself, perhaps she wasn't even as significant as mosquito blood. Blanche's heart ached, feeling both ridiculous and sorrowful. After the play ended, they followed the crowd to the theatre exit. Blanche knew full well that he was rushing off to meet Judith, but she couldn't help but speak up. Let's go home for dinner. I bought a lot of your favorite dishes, but Alston interrupted her without hesitation. No, I have something to do later, it's just one meal, it won't take you too long. Blanche spoke up to stop him. She just wanted to have one last meal with him, to bring closure to their relationship, but Alston was unwilling. His gaze was cold and indifferent, no different from any ordinary day over the past 5 years. He said, next time, I'll definitely accompany you when I have time. At that moment, Blanche finally felt relieved. As usual, she bid him farewell. Okay, I understand. She watched Alston turn and leave, hastily flagging down a taxi before disappearing from sight. Only then did she whisper softly, there won't be a next time, Alston. After returning home, Blanche's scheduled parcel pickup arrived punctually at her door. She mailed all the clothes she couldn't take to Germany back to her parents' house. She then gathered all their couple photos and mementos, neatly packing them before throwing everything into the trash. Before leaving, she took out a sticky note and left a breakup gift for Alston. She stuck a note on the refrigerator. Vegetables are best eaten within 3 days. I've put the beef in the freezer, remember to thaw it before eating. On the washing machine, she posted, your wool sweaters and suits shouldn't go in the washer, take them to the dry cleaners, and never wash different colors together. On the balcony, she left a note, water the plants on the windowsill at least once a week, or they'll dry out and die. By the time she stopped writing, the entire room had unknowingly become covered with yellow sticky notes. Blanche stared fixedly at them. These 5 years, this was how each sticky note had recorded the traces of her love for him. Alston's love for her was just like those sticky notes, torn away after a glance, And this was the last time she would ever love him. Only one sticky note remained. Blanche wrote her final words on it. Alston, happy breakup. She stuck this note onto Alston's tablet. It was all over. Blanche walked out of the home she had lived in for 5 years, carrying her suitcase. With a click, the door locked shut, leaving no echo behind. Alston should have remained oblivious to this loss. But he had one good habit: installing surveillance cameras at home. He had only intended to check subconsciously Blanche's activities at home, but the moment he opened the surveillance feed, the words "break up" leaped into his sight. In an instant, his entire body froze. It was as if a thunderbolt had struck him, leaving his mind utterly blank. Nothing remained. Judith sat beside him at that moment. She had lured him here under the pretense of lab issues. Yet seeing Alston so distraught only deepened her unease. But now, seeing his face darken abruptly after just glancing at his phone screen, she grew even more uneasy. She could only ask aloud, "Did something happen?" Alston offered no explanation, only suddenly rising to leave. Yet the unmistakable panic on his face was an expression she hadn't seen in 10 years. "We'll stop here for today. You're capable enough to handle the remaining steps on your own." Judith, her intuition told her it was related to Blanche. Not wanting to lose face, she spoke up to stop him. "Did something happen with Blanche? She can handle it herself. There's no need for you to rush like this." In the past, perhaps Alston would have sat back down, but now, just seeing that text message had made him lose all reason. How could he possibly sit still with peace of mind? "No need." Alston didn't say anything more this time. He grabbed his coat by the lab door and left. Judith, failing to stop him, suddenly darkened her expression. After a long while, she finally made a call. "Could you help me look into something?" Alston had been trying to call Blanche since leaving the house, but the line kept showing out of service, though his expression remained largely unchanged. Those familiar with him would notice his tightly pressed lips and clenched hands, revealing an unprecedented sense of panic. This panic completely erupted the moment he arrived home. Alston stared blankly at the home he shared with Blanche. It was empty, yet covered in yellow sticky notes. The last rays of the setting sun from the balcony streamed in, tinging the yellow of the notes with a desolate gold. Alston opened his mouth, wanting to call her name, but he knew it was pointless. She was already gone. Only what lay before him was the last thing she had left behind. He looked through them one by one, his rationality slowly being devoured, his heart suddenly constricted. A feeling more suffocating than when he heard about Judith's departure all those years ago. Alston felt for the first time that something was beyond his control. Suddenly, a flash of insight struck him. Alston suddenly remembered Blanche mentioning the DT firm. He quickly searched for the address online and rushed over in a panic. However, without an appointment, he was stopped at the entrance of DT firm by the receptionist. "I'm Blanche's boyfriend. I need to talk to her. Could you help me get in touch?" Alston's palms grew slightly sweaty as he spoke, and he found himself holding his breath unconsciously. But the receptionist gave him a suspicious glance. "You're Ms. Cheng's boyfriend, yet you need me to contact her for you." Alston was left speechless. Just as he was frozen in awkward hesitation, the leader Blanche, whom he had briefly met on the Great Wall, unexpectedly appeared behind him. He patted Alston on the shoulder and signaled for him to follow. Alston followed eagerly, asking in English, "Do you remember? We met once before." Of course, the leader remembered him, but he also remembered Blanche's expression at the time. So now, he just smiled and said to him, "You won't find her at the company." "What?" Alston was stunned for a moment, then he quickly asked, "Then where did she go?" "She's gone abroad and won't be coming back," the leader said without hesitation. Alston froze completely. It took him a long moment to force out 2 words through clenched teeth. "Abroad." The leader nodded, his face utterly calm, yet the words he spoke were like a bullet, piercing straight into his heart. "Don't you know yet? She applied for the German assignment a whole month ago." Alston's face darkened instantly. A month ago, wasn't that exactly when Judith returned home? So, from the moment Judith returned, Blanche was already prepared to leave him. Realizing this, Alston felt an indescribable sensation, only a tightness in his chest, making it hard to breathe. "She didn't tell me about this." He only managed half a sentence before meeting his boss's gaze, which was like watching a play, and instantly felt a surge of anger. "I understand, thank you," he said stiffly before turning to leave. The boss stared for a long while before reluctantly withdrawing his gaze, then he lowered his head and sent a message to Blanche. "Your boyfriend came looking for you at the company. He'll probably follow you to Germany." After sending it, he knew Blanche was on a plane and couldn't reply to his message. Halfway through his gossip, he left as if nothing had happened. Meanwhile, back home from the DT firm, Alston was seething with anger. Whether it was the astonished looks from others or the fact that Blanche had broken up with him so abruptly without a word, he felt miserable, seeing the room full of sticky notes again. A surge of anger flared up. "Are you writing these things to alleviate your guilt? Blanche, I won't allow you to unilaterally break up with me like this." Alston gritted his teeth, tearing down all the sticky notes and clutching them in his hand. The rough paper dug painfully into his palm, but he couldn't bring himself to let go. He threw it into the trash can angrily, out of sight, out of mind. Suddenly, his phone rang. Alston grabbed the phone abruptly, but it wasn't Blanche's call. A flicker of disappointment crossed his heart, but he quickly answered the call. "The flight number you asked me to check for Blanche has been found. Her temporary address in Germany is also located at." Alston, upon receiving the address, an irrepressible surge of joy welled up in his heart. "Thank you. I'll treat you to dinner when I return home." With that, he immediately wanted to book a flight ticket, yet his friend hesitated and asked again, "This is trivial, but I still want to ask, what exactly are you thinking in your heart right now that Judith has also returned home, and Blanche willingly broke up with you? Isn't this the opportunity heaven has given you? Why do you want to go find her again?" The friend's tone gradually grew solemn. "It couldn't be that you've fallen for her." Alston twitched his brow. The strange feeling flashed through his heart, but it slipped away too quickly, gone before he could even process it. So, he just suppressed this feeling. He replied calmly, "No, I just went to ask her for an explanation. Even if we're breaking up, there needs to be a reason. Am I, Alston, someone who can be casually discarded, caught up in the situation?" Alston didn't notice, but his friend listening to him keenly detected the dissatisfaction and anger in his tone. Even when Judith left him back then, his emotional turmoil wasn't as intense as it is at this moment. Yet he naturally couldn't explain this point clearly now, only murmuring vaguely, "Understood, then you go ahead with your work, I won't disturb you further." After hanging up, he pondered for another moment before making a call to someone. The instant the call connected, his friend's expression turned grave. "Judith, I need to talk to you about something." Alston booked his flight tickets and rushed to the airport in a hurry. On the way, a lab employee called and asked, "Alston, our project is at its final critical stage. What do you mean by suddenly taking leave?" Alston tightened his grip on the steering wheel, his tone calm yet leaving no room for argument. "I have some business to attend to. It won't take long. If everything goes smoothly, I can return to the country tomorrow." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then came a deep voice saying, "Judith has returned to the country for your sake. I don't believe you haven't noticed her feelings for you these days." Alston felt another surge of irritation in his heart. His tone gradually turned somewhat impolite. "This is my business." The implication was that he had to go no matter what. "Fine, if that's the case, I have nothing more to say." With a click, the call was disconnected. Alston frowned slightly. At this moment, he finally realized the extent to which his circle had excluded Blanche. If these people could speak so bluntly and biasly in front of him, how much more had they said and done to Blanche behind his back? Alston clenched his teeth and abruptly stepped on the accelerator. At the international airport, tourists speaking languages from all over the world transferred at the same place, departing for different destinations. Alston took some time to find his boarding gate. Sitting in the departure lounge, he even felt a bit nervous. His mind unconsciously fantasized about the scene where, after more than 10 hours, he would arrive in Germany and appear before Blanche. He was definitely going to confront her first. "Even if we're breaking up, why can't we do it face to face? What's more, in these 5 years, they've barely argued, everything has been so stable. So why would she want to break up now? If it's about Judith, that's something he's been struggling with too." After all, he knew deep down that he still had lingering feelings for her, but Blanche had promised him to stay by his side forever. It had only been 5 years, why was she going back on her word now? Alston's mind was a whirl of chaotic thoughts. Without even realizing it, his thoughts had shifted from initial anger to how he might win her back. Suddenly, the phone in his hand erupted with a startling ring. Alston was startled and instinctively hung up the call. After a moment of recovery, the phone rang again, and only then did he realize what was happening. Hesitantly answering the call, "Are you here to persuade me too?" Alston spoke with an inexplicable weariness in his tone, yet Judith remained as gentle as ever, as if nothing that happened before her could ever be more than trivial. Once, Alston had thought this temperament suited him best, but now it left him inexplicably irritated. "Alston, I'm not here to persuade you, I'm here to tell you the truth. Don't you want to know why she suddenly broke up with you?" Alston clenched his phone tightly. He asked with some difficulty, "Because of what?" Judith laughed again on the other end, her laughter carrying a hidden meaning, because when given the choice between her future and you, she chose her future, Alston. This opportunity to go to Germany is very important for her. As long as she spends some time abroad, she can come back as the general manager. Why would you want to stand in the way of her future? Judith's words were like a hammer, shattering Alston's long-held illusion of keeping up appearances. He opened his mouth, instinctively wanting to deny her, but then he remembered what her supervisor had said. She applied for the German assignment a month ago. So, it wasn't because Judith returned to the country that she decided to leave him. Rather, she had long decided to give up on him. And it just so happened that Judith returned to the country. At this thought, Alston finally closed his eyes in humiliation. At this moment, a world-destroying rage overwhelmed Alston. He stiffly hung up the phone and sat in the airport like a soulless statue, motionless. Until the airport announcement for boarding echoed, "The cabin doors will close in 15 minutes. Please proceed to board immediately." Alston finally snapped out of his daze. At this moment, the plane ticket in my hand felt like a joke. After more than 10 hours of flight, Blanche felt her legs go weak the moment she stepped off the plane. Fortunately, the head of the German branch was waiting at the arrival gate. Efficient as ever, he picked her up and drove her straight to the dormitory. "The company here is still in its early stages, so please bear with us. The dorm conditions aren't as good as back home." He drove while making time to chat with her. "Hello, I'm Felix. Although I'm Chinese, my Mandarin isn't very good. I'll need you to teach me more in the future." Felix spoke fluent German, only stumbling through a few words of Chinese when pronouncing his Chinese name. Blanche gave a soft hum, perhaps because she'd encountered a fellow countryman in a foreign land. She couldn't help stealing a few more glances at him. He wore a camel-colored trench coat that accentuated his tall, lean frame, and when he helped her with her luggage, a casual lift revealed the firm lines of his forearm. At this moment, driving with one hand, the half-open car window let the wind rush in. The wind tousled his hair into disarray, yet unexpectedly added a touch of effortless charm. Felix met her gaze in the rearview mirror and flashed an inexplicable smile. "What are you looking at?" Blanche felt scalded by that smile and was the first to look away. Nothing. She had never dealt with a man so confident and self-assured before. Back home, no matter how high-ranking men became, they all maintained an outward show of humility, so much so that it felt disingenuous. So a fleeting sense of novelty brushed through her heart, vanishing as quickly as it came. When they arrived at the firm's dormitory, Felix dutifully carried her luggage inside and checked all the utilities and furniture in the room before finally taking his leave. "If anything happens, come find me in room 304, that's where I live." Felix set down the keys and added another reminder, "Always check the peephole before opening the door. You're new here, and this floor has quite a few residents, plenty of them will be curious about you." Blanche nodded compliantly. Felix finally turned to leave. Closing the door behind him, Blanche let out a sigh of relief. Even though he was someone sent by the firm, being alone in a room with a tall, 1.8-meter tall man still made her feel somewhat awkward. Only after he had left did she finally have the peace of mind to properly examine the room she would be living in for the next several years. Compared to the previous house, the current one feels more like a hotel. The 40-square-meter room contains only basic furniture. With nothing else, Blanche collapsed directly onto the bed, her eyes and brows weary. Now, she finally had time to take out her phone and go online. Only to see a message from her boss. A sudden silence fell. Alston would come looking for her. Blanche doubted the likelihood of those words, disbelieving them from the bottom of her heart, yet felt an inexpressible glimmer of hope. The night passed, another night passed, 48 hours had passed. Blanche lay on the bed, letting out a self-mocking laugh. How could she still be deceiving herself at this point, though her heart ached? She paid it no mind and was about to fall asleep when her phone suddenly buzzed in her hand. When she opened it, she realized Judith had just posted a new moment. "After all the twists and turns, it's still you by my side." The accompanying photo showed a picture of interlocked fingers. Blanche recognized at a glance that this was Alston's hand. Blanche felt as if her heart were being sliced open at this moment. The surging emotions gradually spread, making her breath almost freeze. She had long prepared herself for the possibility that Alston might be with Judith after she left, but she never thought that in just 3 days of her absence, they would be together. This photo felt like a gunshot straight through her heart. Blanche lay on the bed, her forearm covering her eyes, leaving nothing but darkness before her. After a long while, a single tear slid down the side of her face. She truly didn't want to cry for Alston anymore. Yet she couldn't stop thinking about these 5 years. To make Alston forget Judith, She repeatedly did things she disliked for him. If he wanted to study at the library in winter, she would wake up early to reserve a seat for him at the school library. Winter in Beijing exudes desolation everywhere, and even bundled in thick cotton clothes, she still felt the cold. Word has it that Alston's lab needs funding. Despite their group of college students having top-tier academic credentials as their foundation, those investors couldn't help but make some snide remarks. When she found out, she went ahead to make arrangements with each one beforehand. She never mentioned these things to Alston. She simply felt that liking someone means doing things for them. If she told him, he might develop unnecessary feelings out of gratitude. She only wanted Alston's love, not gratitude. Yet, despite all she had done, she received neither gratitude nor love. Blanche's nose suddenly stung as overwhelming emotions surged up, dragging her down into the abyss. For the last time, Blanche, this is the last time you'll cry because of Alston. 3 years later, Blanche wore a camel-colored coat today, her slightly curled red hair cascading down her back. Her graceful figure captured everyone's attention the moment she appeared. Blanche ignored them all, swaying her way into the boss's office. Inside sat none other than the director of the German branch. Seeing Blanche appear, his stern face finally showed a faint smile. "You're here." Blanche gave a quiet acknowledgement and found a seat to sit down. "How did the application go?" The supervisor smiled kindly and pulled out a document from the cabinet. "It's done. Your repatriation order has been officially approved. You'll depart in 3 days. After returning home, you'll directly become the second in command there. How about that? Counts as a promotion, right?" Blanche finally gave a faint smile. She stepped forward, took the documents, and after confirming everything was correct, the tension between her brows eased considerably. "I spent 3 years transforming the German company into what it is today. DT would definitely have to promote me to keep me." She rarely cracked a joke. The supervisor didn't pay it much mind either. After exchanging a few more words, he let her go. Blanche had barely stepped out of the office when she ran into Felix, whose Chinese had genuinely improved quite a bit over the past 3 years. "How'd it go?" Blanche waved the documents in her hand. "I'm home." She smiled gently, with even a hint of nostalgia in her expression. Felix was genuinely happy for her, yet also felt an indescribable sense of loss. "So we won't see each other again after this." Blanche patted him on the shoulder and casually remarked, "Don't worry. Worst case, you can come develop your career in China. I'll take you to climb the Great Wall when the time comes." She said it lightly, without much sincerity. After all, Felix's entire family was in Germany, and his Chinese was often only comprehensible to her alone. Yet now, he was seriously considering it before nodding in agreement. "All right." Blanche thought he was referring to the Great Wall climb and didn't dwell on it further. Turning to leave, only Felix remained standing behind her, staring intently at her retreating figure. 3 days later, Blanche has safely landed in Beijing. Wearing sunglasses, she walked forward calmly. Behind her, a man in a black overcoat brushed past her. The distance between them was merely 5 meters. Alston suddenly halted his steps, his expression momentarily stunned. Then, he abruptly turned his head to look back. Behind him, people came and went, each heading toward their own destinations. Yet, that familiar figure was nowhere to be seen. Alston looked around, feeling an indescribable mix of emotions welling up in his heart. "Alston, what's wrong?" A colleague looked at him curiously. Alston shook his head, gathering all his emotions before replying coolly, "Nothing. I was mistaken." With that, he calmly continued walking forward. Even as he boarded the plane, his heart still held a peculiar turbulence. After 3 years, why did he suddenly remember Blanche again? Hadn't the pain she inflicted been deep enough? Alston closed his eyes, concealing all emotions beneath his lids. 3 years ago, Blanche had chosen to break up with him for the sake of her future. He didn't chase after her, nor did he say anything, silently accepting their separation. He thought it would be the same as his breakup with Judith, a few days of heartache, and then it would pass. Yet even after a week apart, he still found himself thinking of her. A month after the breakup, he still thinks of her, during meals. He misses the dishes she cooked. Upon waking, he misses seeing her sleeping face beside him. When mixing black and white laundry together, he misses her nagging. His life had long been unknowingly filled with traces of her presence. But Blanche had abandoned him. Alston felt he should maintain his dignity, so he kept enduring and never went looking for her. But this longing grew heavier, nearly crushing him. Only then did he belatedly realize that perhaps he had fallen in love with her. Yet by this time, she was already long gone from his side. Alston suddenly opened his eyes, his chest tight and suffocating. He gazed out the window, taking in the entire city. Yet he knew she wasn't there. Blanche on her third day back in the country, she officially joined DT. They were still the same superiors from before, and when they worked together, there was still that unspoken understanding between them. It's just that, Blanche stared at the contract before her, suddenly falling silent. Her superior sighed and was about to withdraw it. I know you don't want anything to do with Alston again, but they're currently the only qualified domestic partner for this case. If it's really too difficult for you, I can assign someone else. Blanche frowned and pressed a hand down on the contract. No need. Since I chose to return home, I was prepared to face him. Seeing her superior's grave expression, she instead smiled. When's the appointment? The superior quickly replied. Tomorrow at 3 p.m. Blanche nodded in acknowledgement before turning to leave. She didn't hesitate but readily accepted this arrangement. One day in the future, they would meet again. If she truly hid away, it would only make him look down on her. Besides, he now had a stable relationship, perhaps both of them were even married. Why should she care anymore? Blanche offered a few words of comfort, managing to suppress her emotions for the time being. The next day, when she arrived at the club, she stood at the entrance, took a deep breath, and finally turned the doorknob to enter. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it might leap out of my chest. She nervously glanced around but didn't see Alston, only unfamiliar faces instead. The newcomer stepped forward with a warm smile and introduced himself. I'm in charge of this section at the lab. You can call me Bobby. Bobby looked about 25 or 26, yet carried himself with remarkable composure. Blanche said nothing, just smiled and took her seat steadily. No sooner had she sat down than Bobby spoke up. Our boss will be here shortly. Please remain patient, it's fine. Blanche felt her palms grow slightly damp. The moment she finished speaking, the door behind her opened. Bobby immediately stood up to greet the person. Professor. Blanche stiffened abruptly, yet the voice that came from behind wasn't Alston S. Are you DT's person in charge? Blanche stared blankly at the unfamiliar face before her. Her anxiously suspended heart suddenly dropped, yet there was an indescribable sense of loss hidden within. Hello, my name is Blanche. She gently extended her hand. The visitor quickly shook it and then explained, sorry, Alston went abroad a few days ago and hasn't returned yet. For today, I'll be fully in charge. Blanche had no objections and led the visitor to the table, smoothly moving into the discussion phase. Yet, her heart was pounding with uncertainty. Alston, is this really going abroad, or deliberately avoiding suspicion? Only after all the basic details were finalized did she finally receive the signed contract. It was then that the person asked with a smile, the matter is resolved, now we can finally sit down and chat. Right, Blanche was stunned. She looked carefully at the other person's face before asking with some uncertainty, are you Chase? Chase nodded vigorously, the tension in his facial muscles visibly easing. I thought you were angry with me and pretending not to recognize me. Blanche smiled helplessly. Sorry about that, it's just been so long since we last met that my memory's a bit fuzzy. Besides, you didn't introduce yourself earlier. Chase also wore a helpless expression, taking a long moment before saying, didn't I invite you to the opening ceremony that time? Then just a few days later, I heard you broke up with Alston. So, he left the sentence unfinished. But Blanche understood instantly. He felt somewhat uneasy, thinking he had indirectly caused their breakup. Blanche let out a light laugh and reassured him. This has nothing to do with you. Even without you, I would have broken up with Alston in a few days. Chase froze for a moment, opening his mouth as if to say something, but ultimately remained silent. Blanche, however, didn't dwell on the matter and was the first to walk outside. Bobby startled by this shocking revelation. His pupils trembled as he chased after Chase and asked, so this is the professor's ex-girlfriend, Blanche? Chase gave a faint hum of acknowledgement, then Bobby clicked his tongue in amazement beside him. No wonder even someone like our professor would drown his sorrows in drink for love, she's such a stunning beauty. Chase also momentarily lost himself in thought. Indeed, he never thought that someone like Alston would actually spend a whole drunken night murmuring Blanche's name. After driving Judith half mad with anger, the next day he went about his business as usual, coming and going to work normally. For these 3 years, Alston hasn't had a single woman by his side. Could it be that he's still waiting for her? Chase thought of this, and suddenly his eyes lit up as he quickly chased after them. Blanche was stopped by him at the door, looking at him in surprise. Is there something else? Chase was slightly out of breath, but more than that, it was due to nervousness. Alston has been single all these years. The sudden statement startled Blanche for a moment. She instinctively asked, he wasn't with Judith. Chase frowned and countered, why would he be with Judith, shortly after you broke up? Judith went abroad, at least from what I saw, there was nothing between them. Blanche couldn't help but frown. She hadn't forgotten that photo Judith had sent back then. Was it Austin who broke up with her again? Or was it Judith who abandoned him once more? Blanche couldn't help but dwell deeper on these thoughts, only to quickly catch herself and inwardly curse her own weakness. What did it matter who Austin was with now? At this realization, Blanche's expression turned icy. Austin's affairs stopped being my concern long ago. Whether his with Judith or not is his choice, I couldn't care less. She spoke calmly, only to see Chase's expression change drastically. Without much thought, she gave a slight nod and turned to leave, yet in the next instant, she found herself face to face with the icy gaze of the man behind her. It was Austin, whom she hadn't seen in 3 years. Blanche, her pupils trembled. Instantly, all words stuck in her throat, unable to be spoken. 3 years had passed, yet the moment she saw Austin again, she felt not the slightest sense of unfamiliarity in her heart. It was as if she had never forgotten him these 3 years. At this thought, Blanche couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. She really hadn't let go. In any case, these weren't emotions she should be showing now. Long time no see. She spoke lightly, her tone devoid of any emotion, as if meeting an ordinary friend, perhaps not even an ordinary friend. Austin kept a cold expression, showing no sign of having heard her words. He merely gave a slight nod before his gaze shifted past her to Chase behind her. This time, the warning was unmistakable, as if saying to him, "You've crossed the line." Chase choked for a moment before changing the subject. "Didn't you say you couldn't make it back?" Austin gave a quiet hum and replied calmly, "Took less time than expected, so I came to check." Blanche arched an eyebrow but said nothing further. Merely stating, "You two catch up, I've got things to handle, so I'll take my leave." Austin remained silent, standing there as straight and unmoving as a pine tree. Blanche walked past him but still heard him say coldly to Chase behind her, "Next time, don't bring up my affairs with irrelevant people." Her footsteps abruptly halted. Irrelevant. Blanche curled her lips in self-mockery before continuing to walk away. Austin heard the footsteps gradually fade away. A face finally darkened completely, freezing the surrounding atmosphere along with it. Chase could clearly see his stubborn denial. With a cold laugh, he said, "Keep being stubborn then. When Blanche gets a new boyfriend, let's see where you'll go to regret it." Austin clenched his hand unconsciously. He stood rooted to the spot, his brows drooping. "Didn't you hear? She said she doesn't care about me. Doesn't that make me an insignificant person to her?" Chase choked on his words again, utterly speechless. "Fine, have it your way." He stormed off angrily, but after a few steps, suddenly halted and said, "When I first met you, you weren't like this. Otherwise, I wouldn't have switched jobs to join your lab. But one thing I'm certain of, DT, this case domestically truly only has us as a viable partner, but we aren't limited to just them. Since you've overruled all objections to choose DT, then don't bring personal feelings into this anymore. Otherwise, one day, you'll genuinely regret it." Chase finished speaking and left. Austin stood there with a cold expression for a while, then suddenly felt inexplicably weary. When he learned abroad that this case was being handled by Blanche, he forcibly accelerated his steps and deliberately rushed back. What was it all for? Austin unusually fell into silence, ultimately filled with complexity yet unable to act. On the other side, Blanche returned to the law firm with the contract. She absent-mindedly flipped through the documents before her, her gaze never truly settling on them. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. It was her assistant. "Blanche, the German side has sent another representative. Would you like to come out and meet them?" Blanche frowned slightly. She hadn't received any news about someone joining last minute. Though puzzled, she didn't show it and simply stood up to follow her out. Just as they reached the center of the lobby, a familiar male voice rang out. "Hello everyone, I'm your new colleague joining the team. My name is Felix, and my Chinese isn't very good." Blanche froze. A faint joy welled up in her heart as she watched the man surrounded by the crowd, and she let out a soft chuckle. "Felix, why do you always use this same line when talking to Chinese people?" Felix turned his head quickly upon hearing Blanche's voice, grinning widely, clearly remembering back when he had told Blanche that his Chinese wasn't good during their first conversation. "Am I wrong though? I genuinely don't know Chinese. If you hadn't taught me, I'd probably need an interpreter just to visit China." Two adorable dimples instantly appeared on his fair-skinned face. Blanche was momentarily dazed, and when she regained her composure, she noticed several female colleagues around her openly or covertly staring at him. He smiled helplessly and said, "Come to my office first. Let's not stand here." She turned and walked away, leading the way for him. Felix quickly followed after her. Behind them, The crowd watched their departing figures, whispering among themselves, "That guy must have a thing for our Blanche, no kidding, he chased her all the way from Germany to China, of course he's into her. TSK, only our Blanche has such charm, she's got men wrapped around her finger." The assistant cleared her throat subtly, giving a meaningful look. "All right, enough chatter, everyone get back to work." Only then did the group disperse. The assistant also secretly glanced toward Blanche's office, their inner gossip instincts surging uncontrollably. Inside the office, Blanche brewed a cup of tea for Felix and casually remarked, "Have some tea, Long Jing, it's decent." Felix nodded, took a small sip, and sincerely said, "Not bad at all. You can only find this kind of quality back home." Blanche let out a light laugh, her eyes brimming with contentment. "Listen to what you're saying, if it weren't for your poor Chinese. Anyone would think you're Chinese." Felix shrugged. "What do you mean think? I am Chinese, just didn't grow up here." Blanche knew this perfectly well. Then he immediately followed up with another question. "Why did you suddenly decide to come work in China? Didn't you just get promoted in Germany?" Felix set down his teacup, fingers tracing the rim. "Didn't you say I could come work in China? Or were you just joking?" Blanche was taken aback, recalling the words she said to Felix when she left. It was clear she had merely uttered a polite remark, yet Felix took it to heart. This misunderstanding came completely out of nowhere. Blanche let out a sigh before asking more carefully, "What about your parents? Don't they object to you returning to China? Didn't you say they're getting older and don't want any more upheavals?" Felix nodded, raising his head with calmness in his eyes. "I told them I wanted to return to China. They didn't object, only saying they hoped I could visit our hometown and take some photos for them." Blanche finally felt relieved. She casually asked another question. "Do you need my help with the trip back home?" Felix nodded vigorously and replied in broken Chinese, "Of course. Without your help, I won't find the place." Blanche let out another light chuckle. "Where is your hometown?" Felix thought carefully for a moment, then pulled out an old photo from his pocket. 303, Happiness Street, downtown Beijing. Blanche froze abruptly, her hand stiffening, nearly flung the teacup from my hand. She cried out in shock, "Say that again. Where exactly?" Felix this time pronounced it perfectly clear. "I said, at 303, Xingfu Street, downtown Beijing." Blanche this time she heard it clearly, her face a mix of surprise and delight as she countered. "Do you know where I lived as a child?" Felix shook his head, Blanche suddenly understanding. She smiled and spoke deliberately. "I live at 302, Happiness Street." Felix widened his eyes, they were full of surprise, mixed with a hint of disappointment. "What a pity. I moved abroad when I was 1 year old, and I've completely forgotten all my memories from China, hearing you say that. Maybe we even met as children." Blanche nodded thoughtfully as well. "That's quite possible. But you know, I was only 3 when you went abroad. I don't remember anything about you at all." Felix snorted and reluctantly put the matter aside. "All right, I'll leave this to you. Now we have more important things to do." He raised his eyebrows smugly. Blanche asked curiously, "What is it?" Then she saw Felix get excited as he eagerly said, "Take me out for something delicious after work." Blanche was taken aback, looking at his radiant smile. I inexplicably found myself infected by his joy and couldn't help but smile along. "All right, we'll go right after work." At exactly 6 o'clock, Felix appeared punctually at the office door. He didn't rush her, just kept watching her with expectant eyes. "Blanche, how could I possibly work overtime now?" She shut down her computer and left right on time. "Let's go. I'm taking you to try Peking duck." Finally able to play the host, Blanche naturally took him to a famous Beijing restaurant. She had intended to book a private room, but he insisted on experiencing local culture and chose a table in the main hall. Blanche had no objections, though she'd grown accustomed to heading straight for private rooms whenever she'd brought Alston here before. He'd always complained about the noise. She had always loved lively gatherings and cherished her friends. Felix shared her tastes perfectly. After placing their order, Felix still seemed unsatisfied. "What a pity there's just the two of us, otherwise I'd have ordered every single dish on the menu." Blanche looked at him with a smile and promised, "Don't worry, I'll bring you here again next time." Felix's eyes suddenly lit up. "Really?" he asked again in disbelief, his tone tinged with disappointment. "Don't just say it casually like last time, I'll take it seriously." Blanche froze for a moment. She hadn't expected Felix, who seemed so rough around the edges, to actually understand everything. Now feeling somewhat apologetic, she nodded solemnly and replied, "It's true, as long as I'm free." Felix smiled contentedly at last. Just then, the dishes arrived. They happily shared the meal. Felix, who seemed genuinely passionate about food, cleaned every plate spotless. Blanche, as the one who brought him here, couldn't help but smile seeing him show such appreciation. It was strange, but with Felix, she always felt at ease, whether abroad or at home. Blanche was quite happy to spend time with him. After eating and drinking her fill, Blanche suddenly stood up. "I'll go settle the bill." Felix didn't stand on ceremony with her either, waving her off while rubbing his stomach with a laugh. "You go ahead, I still need to rest a bit." Blanche looked at his exaggerated expression and smiled helplessly. Then she walked alone toward the checkout counter. After paying, she returned to the original spot but didn't see Felix, checking her phone. She realized he had gone to the restroom, so she sat back down in her seat, waiting for someone. A familiar voice came from above. Blanche looked up to see Alston and Chase, dressed in formal suits. They appeared to be discussing a contract. Blanche's radar instinctively went off. Alston couldn't possibly be thinking of changing business partners because of her. Could he? Alston could tell what she was thinking at a glance, but precisely because he guessed her thoughts, his face darkened instantly. "It's just a regular dinner gathering, don't overthink it." Blanche let out an "oh," feeling somewhat awkward as well, so she thought of going out to wait for Felix, standing up as if to leave. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going now." Alston felt an indescribable restlessness welling up inside him, especially upon noticing the tableware on the table, clearly set for two. This agitation instantly peaked. I couldn't help but grab Blanche's hand as we passed each other. "Now that we've met again, don't you have anything to say to me?" Blanche froze for a moment before quickly regaining her composure, her face darkening instantly. "Didn't I make myself clear already?" Alston could no longer contain himself, his emotions rarely showing so plainly. "Does long time no see even count as conversation?" Blanche immediately furrowed her brows, displeasure evident on her face. "There's nothing else worth saying. I don't think there's any extra words to be shared between me and my ex-boyfriend." Seeing Alston's face completely stiffen, she remembered they were at least business partners now, so she forced herself to soften her tone and said, "Except for work matters." The implication was clear. Beyond work, there was no need for them to converse at all. After understanding her meaning, Alston's face darkened visibly. He clenched his fists but found himself speechless. This was decidedly not an environment conducive to casual conversation, because of their confrontation. Quite a few people had noticed the commotion here. Chase sighed and reminded, "There are still people waiting." Alston finally snapped back to reality, opening his palm to reveal a deep red mark. "Have it your way." He spoke coldly and then tried to leave, but then he saw a man walking straight toward Blanche, speaking in German. "I'm ready, let's go." He glanced at Alston and asked curiously, "Do you know him?" Blanche replied coldly, "Just a friend, let's go." With that, he was about to leave with him. Alston didn't understand German, but he wasn't blind. He could clearly see Blanche's familiarity with this man. Suddenly, Chase's words from that day flashed in his mind. "How can you be sure Blanche isn't seeing someone now?" In that instant, hormones made the choice before he did. Alston forcefully grabbed Blanche's hand and demanded word by word, "Who is he?" Blanche froze in surprise. Felix, however, darkened his expression and forcefully pried open Alston's grip. Having worked out for years, he was naturally stronger than Alston, a researcher, so even though Alston turned red in the face, he could only reluctantly let go. "Speak properly if you have something to say. Keep your hands to yourself." The stuttering Chinese made Alston pause. A foreigner. Blanche was thoroughly irritated. She whispered to Felix, "Let me handle this," then turned a cold gaze toward Alston. "What exactly are you trying to do?" Alston wanted to ask himself the same question. What exactly was he trying to do? But his mind was in chaos, and no questions could form on his lips. Chase watched the drama unfold for a long while before finally interjecting, "Is this the boyfriend you met abroad?" He had just said it casually at the time, never expecting it to actually come true. Blanche subconsciously wanted to deny it, but then met Alston's profound gaze. For some inexplicable reason, she lied. "Yes." Felix paused, looking at her with a complicated expression, but said nothing. Meanwhile, Alston seemed completely dazed upon hearing this. His eyes instantly filled with bloodshot veins, brimming with disbelief. "Did you get a boyfriend?" Blanche was utterly baffled by his retort. With a mocking smile, she shot back, "Alston, you don't actually think I'm obligated to remain chaste for you after we broke up, do you?" Alston felt as if he'd been struck over the head by a club. He opened his mouth, but only bitterness came out. "You, enough." Blanche shot him an irritated glance. "It's been 3 years, you can date Judith." "But I'm not allowed to." She grabbed Felix's hand and walked away right in front of him. Alston stood there for a long time. "It felt as if something had pierced through my entire heart." the pain unbearable. His complexion grew increasingly pale, as if he might collapse at any moment. Chase, seeing this, could only pat his shoulder and say sincerely, "At this point, perhaps both of you should move forward." With that, he was the first to walk inside. He didn't say much, given Alston's personality. He would soon figure it out. As expected, Alston quickly suppressed his emotions, leaving only a trace of blood red in his eyes. Yet he stubbornly glanced in the direction where Blanche had left, an indescribable obstinacy lingering in his gaze. On the other side, Blanche held Felix's hand as they left the restaurant, her mind in turmoil. Unaware, she continued holding his hand all the way to the underground parking lot before finally letting go. Felix's heart secretly skipped a beat as she released his hand. Once inside the car, neither of them spoke for quite some time. Blanche didn't know how to begin. Felix didn't want to disturb the peaceful atmosphere. Suddenly, Blanche pursed her lips and looked earnestly at Felix. "I'm sorry for using you earlier." Felix still wanted to pretend he didn't understand, mumbling, "The Chinese you were speaking just now was too difficult. I couldn't follow." Blanche was taken aback. Hearing him say he didn't understand, she couldn't quite place the feeling in her heart, only letting out a faint sigh. "Never mind if you don't understand. Let's leave it at that for now." She too vaguely skirted around the topic. When they reached the dormitory building, Blanche found it somewhat amusing instead. "Back in Germany, you were the one who brought me to the dorm. Now that we're back in the country, it's my turn to bring you here. Quite a coincidence, isn't it?" Felix smiled and went along with her words. "Indeed, what a twist of fate. So, how about coming up for a glass of wine before you go?" Blanche shook her head. "I drove here. How am I supposed to get back if I drink?" Felix was about to suggest she could stay at his place when he suddenly remembered his current apartment was only 40 square meters with just a single bed, so he said nothing more. "All right then, I'll head up first. See you tomorrow," he said this to Blanche. Blanche gave a soft in response, but noticing he hadn't gotten out of the car, she turned to look at him only to meet his sparkling eyes. Suddenly, her heart seemed to skip a beat, and she replied with a mix of helplessness and delight, "See you tomorrow." Only after getting the response he wanted did Felix finally step out of the car and quickly head upstairs to leave. Blanche inexplicably felt as if she just dropped off a girlfriend. After laughing, he also drove away. Felix stepped into the room, and his expression immediately turned stern. The feeling he had just experienced in front of Blanche vanished without a trace. He took a bottle of red wine from the fridge, poured it into a glass, and then staggered toward the window. The dusk in China is different from that in Germany. He could see uncles and aunts downstairs walking arm in arm to the square dance, the unfamiliar air carrying a sense of tranquility he had never smelled before. Felix had just taken a sip. Then his phone rang. He picked up and uttered a cold, "Hello." If Blanche were still here, she would have recognized that the person on the other end of the line was her direct superior in Germany. "Felix, are you getting used to life in China? You suddenly pulled this stunt. I don't even know how to explain it to your mom. Should I say you chased a woman all the way to China? You're really out of your mind." Felix let out a muffled laugh. With a somewhat roguish tone, he said, "Say whatever you want, just don't blame me if my mom storms into your house demanding to know what's going on between me and Blanche." There was a silence on the other end, seemingly stunned by Felix's shamelessness. After a long pause, a dazed voice finally asked, "So, did you catch up with her?" Felix recalled the man who had suddenly appeared today, his eyes turning cold in an instant. "Still working on it. By the way, help me look up someone. His name is Alston. I want every detail about him, don't leave out a single thing." Blanche finally made it home and, after a shower, couldn't wait to collapse into bed. Little did she know, Alston's calls would come one after another like relentless death knells. Blanche frowned, hanging up on each one, and when it seemed he wouldn't stop, she irritably blocked his number altogether. Only then did the world fall silent. Who would have thought that after just 5 minutes, the phone rang again? Blanche was instantly irritated and ready to answer with a string of curses, but then she saw it was her boss calling. She immediately hit the brakes, and the words on the tip of her tongue transformed into a calm, "What's up? Calling me at this hour? Did something go wrong with one of the contracts?" But her boss's first words were, "Alston is our client." "What were you thinking, blocking them for no reason?" Blanche froze for a moment, then a wave of silent resentment began to spread. Well, after 3 years apart, Alston has learned to throw his weight around. Blanche certainly couldn't tell her boss about her old history with Alston, so she could only grit her teeth and reply, "All right, I understand, I'll pull him out right now." The boss hung up the phone, satisfied, probably having gotten the news. Alston's call came through again soon after. This time, Blanche had no choice but to answer the phone, no matter how unwilling she was. "Alston, what exactly do you want? Can you just say it all at once?" Alston's tone was perfectly natural, carrying not a hint of threat yet leaving no room for refusal. "Break up with your boyfriend." Blanche was so furious she nearly laughed at the absurdity. "Alston, you've been harassing me all this time just to say that." "Yes." Alston responded without hesitation. Blanche also sneered coldly. "Then let me tell you now, impossible." She hadn't intended to use Felix to provoke him again, but hearing his current demand felt like he was grinding her rationality into the dirt. "My boyfriend and I have been together for 3 years, and our relationship is very stable now. We might even get married in the future. Can you please stop meddling in my affairs?" Alston suddenly began breathing heavily, as if forcibly suppressing something. "Before you left, what did you mean by saying I was with Judith?" He changed the subject quickly, as if he had just come up with an excuse to avoid the topic after hearing her mention marriage. Blanche frowned. "Nothing much. I've already stepped aside for you. So you should naturally be with your first love now." Alston's voice suddenly rose a few pitches. "After we broke up, I never got together with any other woman, unlike you." He only spoke half the sentence, but it was enough for Blanche to guess the rest. She smiled sarcastically. Perhaps Judith had posted that social media update intentionally, or maybe the man's hand in the photo was photoshopped after all. Given their current relationship, Alston had no reason to lie about this matter. So what? Whether he was with Judith or not doesn't matter anymore. She had made her decision 3 years ago, and there was no changing it now. "I understand." Blanche responded coldly and said bluntly, "I'll say it again, Alston, we're done. Who you choose to be with in the future has nothing to do with me. I also hope we don't contact each other outside of work. That's all, I'm hanging up now." Blanche promptly ended the call. "Now that I've spoken my mind, the suffocating feeling in my chest seems to have eased considerably." Just then, with a buzz, my phone received another message. It was from Alston. Blanche figured Alston must have been angered by her, hence the harsh message, but never did I expect that after unlocking it, there would be such a message dripping with a tone of humility. "You're just dating, not getting married." Blanche was utterly shocked. She read the text several times in disbelief, yet couldn't bring herself to believe it was sent by Alston. His meaning was obvious. He wanted to get back together. Only a fool wouldn't see what he was implying. "But it's precisely because I saw it that it felt horrifying. Blanche, back when we were together, I almost never sensed such enthusiasm from him. It didn't seem like something he would do, to actively seek reconciliation after a breakup." Blanche's expression shifted repeatedly. "In the end, I chose not to reply at all, quietly adding his number back to the block list instead. Perhaps he was acting on impulse, driven mad by passion, but she remained sane. Those 10 years of chasing had already drained all her strength. Getting back together, unless she'd truly lost her mind, she would never do such a thing. Alston sat on the sofa, feeling as if sitting on pins and needles. Half an hour had passed since he sent that vaguely conciliatory message, yet his phone remained completely silent, not a single reply in sight. Alston thought, even if someone suddenly went to take a shower, they should have been out in half an hour by now. So he held his breath and sent another message, but what appeared in the chat box was an excruciatingly glaring red exclamation mark. He had been Blanche blocked again. Alston's heart instantly plummeted from great heights, shattering into pieces upon hitting the ground. He stared blankly ahead. There was nothing in the air, yet it felt as if a shadowy figure lingered. In the Blanche 3 years since their breakup, he often felt someone's presence accompanying him in the empty air. He knew very well that he was ill, yet he dared not seek treatment, because he was afraid this person would disappear from his world. At this moment, before his eyes, Blanche sat there wearing the familiar warm yellow pajamas, working on her laptop while occasionally glancing at him. "Why do you keep looking at me?" Alston had never asked before, because he was accustomed to ignoring her loving gaze. But now, he wanted to ask, "Blanche, do you still love me?" The words left his lips. Yet the vast room held only the sound of his own breathing. Blanche's shadow had vanished, there was nothing there at all. Alston finally closed his eyes in unbearable shame, his heart filled with desolation. The next day, Blanche went to the law firm intending to continue advancing the case, but was summoned into the supervisor's office. The lab suddenly encountered some issues and says they need to delay the delivery timeline. The supervisor hesitated before speaking. "Go find out what exactly happened. This case absolutely cannot be delayed. If they need anything from us, accommodate them as much as you can." Although the boss said so, his eyes clearly showed he was willing to cooperate at any cost. Blanche clenched her hands, feeling a vague sense of helplessness growing in her heart. She had no idea Alston was really thinking, but she couldn't avoid discussing work matters with him. Blanche let out a sigh and relented. Understood, I'll go visit in person. After leaving the office, she returned to her desk, expressionlessly picked up the phone, pulled up the original document, made a few detailed changes, and printed out a new copy. Holding the freshly printed contract, she grabbed her coat from the chair and walked out the door. Late autumn, and bitterly cold outside. Blanche arrived at Alston laboratory with a slightly pale complexion. She rarely came to this side, and after 3 years, most of the original employees had been replaced. As a result, everyone assumed she was DT Law Firm's employee rather than their professor's ex-girlfriend, until one day, a girl spotted her by chance and gasped in shock, her eyes filled with unmistakable disgust. Blanche, how dare you come looking for Professor Blanche? Blanche let out a cold laugh. She also recognized this person as a long-time lab employee who knew about her relationship with Alston. As for why this person harbored such inexplicable malice toward her, coincidentally, Blanche wanted to know why too. As the girl's accusatory words landed, the atmosphere around them instantly froze. Everyone's gaze toward Blanche took on a peculiar quality. It was as if she had done something wrong. Blanche remained motionless, but filed away the suspicion in her mind. Fortunately, Alston soon appeared, and upon seeing her, a clear flicker of joy lit up his face. Blanche raised an eyebrow. Somewhat surprised, when Alston emerged, everyone else scattered like birds and beasts. The two of them went one after another into Alston's office. Blanche unconsciously took a few more glances before realizing how surprisingly this room was, where he spent nearly 12 hours a day. Against the wall stood a bookshelf, crammed with books, from physics to mathematics. Most of the books showed signs of being. Blanche withdrew his gaze, shifted it to Alston, and without beating around the bush, got straight to the point. Alston, haven't you always wanted to talk to me? I'm here now, so, can we proceed with the contract after we're done? Alston had just been delighted that Blanche came to see him, but the next moment when he heard her words, his face involuntarily stiffened. The originally relaxed atmosphere became somewhat awkward. Blanche didn't want to talk to him for this very reason. He was always icy. When he was happy, he would chat with her a bit more. When unhappy, he would make everyone around him equally miserable with his coldness. This was a form of subtle control, though he remained unaware of it. Do you really despise me so much? Is there nothing else you want to talk to me about besides work, like the truth about why you went abroad back then? Alston hinted with a trace of sorrow flashing through his eyes. Blanche frowned, knowing full well that if this matter wasn't cleared up now, it would never end. Fine, I'll tell you. She adjusted her clothes and said calmly, when I broke up with you back then, it was indeed because Judith returned to the country. Alston's pupils trembled, somewhat incredulous, but I heard it was because you wanted a promotion. Blanche let out a sudden cold laugh. Her eyes were filled with indifference, so cold it was almost hurtful. So, you believed it? With a single sentence, Alston was left speechless. He truly believed it, after all, with Judith's precedent. He thought he had been abandoned by his girlfriend once again. Blanche took a deep breath, her expression growing even colder. Alston, I promised you I would always stay by your side. Do you remember? Alston froze, his expression stiffening. After a long pause, he finally gave a rigid nod. Blanche then continued, I promised you, and I won't leave you just for a promotion. I don't know where you heard such absurd rumors, but I don't care, because in the end, you believed them. That's what matters. Suddenly, she remembered that inexplicable text message from her boss that year. Alston will come to Germany to find you. At that time, when she saw this text message, she had believed it too. She even began to fantasize. Alston, if he chased her to Germany, how long she could hold out under his pursuit. But in the end, he never came. So this was why he had trusted someone else's lie and thought she had betrayed him. Blanche nearly laughed aloud, her eyes even reddening slightly at the corners. Alston only now realized he had been deceived by Judith. His hands clenched tightly, yet his heart kept sinking endlessly. Blanche hadn't betrayed him, she had truly been heartbroken by him, which was why she left the country. Is there still a chance for him to start over with her? Alston was filled with unease. The truth, delayed by 3 years, lay before him, so shocking it made his breath come in ragged gasps. It felt like a colossal mountain pressing down on his heart, impossible to shake off and unbearable to endure. Blanche had a cold expression as she handed over the documents in her hand. If you think the original contract offers too little benefit to your side, I have a new one here. Compared to the original, we can concede 1 more percentage point, not a fraction beyond that. Her tone was strictly businesslike, devoid of any other emotion. Austin felt his heart being torn apart, tasting regret. If I had come to Germany to find you back then, would you have forgiven me? Blanche involuntarily tightened her grip on the documents in her hand, yet her face remained expressionless. No, the moment you kept pushing me away time and again because of Judith, we had no future left. The resolute rejection instantly drained the color from Austin's face, as if all his strength had been drained in an instant. Even his usual careless demeanor now seemed utterly dejected. He stared blankly at the contract, took it, and without a word, picked up the pen beside him and signed his name. Then, he handed it to her. Blanche took it and flipped to the last page of the contract. The words written there were not Austin's name, but 3 neatly written characters, "Forgive me." Blanche closed her eyes and took a deep breath, then she opened them again, her gaze icy cold. "What do you mean by this? If you're not willing, then don't sign. Save me a few sheets of A4 paper." The sarcastic words fell on Austin's ears, yet seemed to have lost their sting. He remained silent for a moment, then simply said, "The contract will proceed as originally agreed. No concessions are needed from you." Blanche also fell silent. After a long pause, he finally asked, "Will you honor the agreement then?" Austin nodded, his face ashen with defeat. Blanche couldn't bear to see that look on him, as if all his despondency were her doing. It was clearly him who kept getting entangled with Judith first, yet everyone believed she was the one who abandoned him. Blanche also felt a surge of irritation in her heart. Clutching the discarded documents, she strode straight out. At the doorway, her footsteps suddenly halted. Turning back to look at him, she said, "I hope next time I meet your colleagues, they won't look at me with those eyes reserved for heartbreakers, since it's all a misunderstanding. I'd appreciate it if you'd clear things up as soon as possible. My reputation is also important." With that, she turned and left without hesitation. Austin took several deep breaths, then darkened his expression and pressed the intercom. "All hands meeting in 30 minutes. Not a single person can be absent." After leaving the laboratory, Blanche sent a message to their superior. Resolved, he closed his phone and stopped concerning himself with work matters. At this moment, there was a bitterness in her heart. She thought that after going to Austin's office once and clearing everything up, she would feel less upset, but she never expected that for these 3 years, Austin had been holding resentment towards her. The misunderstanding had existed between them from the very beginning. Yet neither was willing to unravel it. She loved Austin, but didn't know how to unlock his heart. "I thought that if I could humble myself a little more and hold on a little longer, I might touch his heart." Yet she had never considered whether he actually needed her devotion. Perhaps from beginning to end, he had merely been amusing himself with her on a passing whim. And now, perhaps out of habit with her, after going around in circles, I still chose her in the end, not out of love, but simply out of habit. Blanche, her expression dimmed, but the phone in her palm suddenly rang violently at that moment. On the screen were only 3 large words, "Felix." Blanche's heart skipped a beat once again. She didn't know how to handle this call, but after hesitating, she answered anyway. "What's wrong?" Felix, unaware of what she'd just been through, said cheerfully, "What do you mean? It's after work hours. I'm asking if you want to hang out, so that's how it is." Blanche let out a sigh. There were simply too many things happening today, and now all she wanted was to drown her exhaustion with alcohol. Without giving it much thought, she replied directly, "Forget it, let's make plans another time." Felix's voice paused for a moment, but without further comment, he readily agreed. Blanche gave a soft hum before hanging up the phone, quickly sending the address to Lambert, Nightfall Bar. "Come quickly." Austin had just stepped out of the laboratory when Chase dragged him off to the bar. Chase, who would have thought this guy with his thick eyebrows and big eyes was actually one of those drinking enthusiasts. Austin was by nature averse to bustling places, yet Chase's single remark, "Don't you want to let off some steam?" was enough to persuade him, and upon arriving at the bar, this thought faintly turned into regret. In the dance floor, everyone was wildly shaking their heads. Completely lost in the moment, Austin picked up his glass, downing one drink after another, not to vent, but to get drunk. But before he could get drunk, he first heard his own name. His hand suddenly paused as he turned his head and saw Blanche. She was wearing a bright red dress with delicate makeup, laughing and joking with Lambert as they both teased him. Yes, they were teasing him. Lambert, upon hearing what had happened that day, slammed his hand down so hard that the surrounding men couldn't help but shudder. "Austin, what right does that guy have to come crawling back to you? Hasn't he hurt you enough already? You wasted a full 10 years of your life on him. How many decades does a person even have? How dare Austin treat you like this?" Lambert said through gritted teeth. He should taste the bitterness of unrequited pursuit himself. "That's what you call poetic justice." Blanche chuckled lightly. Austin is a renowned figure in physics with that massive laboratory of his. I'm afraid the unrequited pursuit you speak of is something he'll never experience in this lifetime. Austin listened silently, then tilted his head back to down another glass of wine, bitter beyond measure. Blanche didn't care what was on the table. Drinking glass after glass, these wines all tasted sweet anyway, seemingly low in alcohol content, but she'd forgotten. Those deceptively sweet drinks included several specially blended spirits with a powerful kick, and so, very soon Blanche was drunk, muttering to herself, "Actually, this matter can't be blamed on Austin." Austin suddenly stiffened. His hand subconsciously tightened around the glass as he gradually moved a bit closer in her direction. Blanche, unaware of his presence behind her, answered candidly, "From his perspective, I'm indeed no different from a heartless woman who suddenly abandoned him. If I came home from work one day to find all the luggage gone and my boyfriend ended things with just a breakup text, I'd be devastated too," she added with particular emphasis. Even if I didn't love him. Austin heard this and desperately sought to make amends in his heart. "No, I love you very much." Alas, no one could hear it anymore. Blanche silently downed another glass of wine, her mind growing increasingly hazy. "But tell me, what exactly is Austin thinking? Why couldn't he see me when I loved him, but now that I don't love him anymore, he comes crawling back? Could it be that he has some unspeakable, peculiar preferences?" Austin nearly choked to death in the bar, unable to catch his breath. He never expected that his inconsistency would lead Blanche to think in this direction. In an instant, his face turned red then dark, a spectacle of emotions. Lambert laughed for a long while before slinging an arm over her shoulder, winking mischievously. "Why are you still curious about him? Could it be you haven't gotten over him yet?" Austin held his breath, his gaze involuntarily drifted toward Blanche's face. "What are you talking about? In this world, the last person I'd ever reconcile with is him." Austin. Blanche was thoroughly drunk, yet her vicious words spilled out one after another. "He deserves to grow old alone, to spend his whole life with lab equipment." Austin gazed deeply at Blanche, then lowered his head. Concealing the boundless disappointment and pain in his eyes, absent-mindedly swirling the wine glass in his hand, his striking looks had drawn covert glances from numerous women around him. It wasn't until a woman confident enough in her own beauty made the first move and approached him. "Can I add your WeChat?" The woman adjusted her long hair, perfectly exposing her face to the bar's lighting. Without Austin even lifting his head, he simply said, "No." The woman's expression changed slightly. As if she still had something to say, Chase quickly laughed it off. "No problem. If he won't add me then I'll add him, same difference." The woman smiled awkwardly, added Chase on WeChat and then made a quick getaway. Chase finally looked at him and the several empty bottles of red wine on his side, immediately feeling a twitch in his eyelid. "Austin, I only took my eyes off you for a moment, and you've already drunk this much. Do you still want to go to work tomorrow?" His voice was so loud that several nearby tables couldn't help but glance their way. Blanche and Lambert were no exception. Austin paused mid-step, feeling Blanche's gaze like searing flames upon him, burning with startling intensity. He took a deep breath, mustering his courage to look toward Blanche's direction again, only to find her figure already gone. It felt as if a hole had suddenly torn open in his heart, letting countless emotions leak away. Austin replied hoarsely, "I'm a bit drunk, heading home now. Will you stay, or come with me?" Chase was busy chatting up another woman when he heard this. With a tone of regret, he said, "Go on then, leave. Had I known you'd be this boring at a bar, I'd have brought someone else." Austin rarely refrained from arguing back, but this time he just silently followed behind as they left. His eyes scanned the bar, desperately hoping to catch a glimpse of Blanche and Lambert somewhere in the crowd. Finally, at the bar entrance, Lambert was hailing a taxi across the street, while Blanche stood swaying drunkenly by the door, clearly completely wasted. Austin couldn't help but step forward just as she leaned back. Falling right into his arms, Blanche, mistaking him for Lambert, closed her eyes in relief and mumbled, "Let's go home. That guy Austin is in the bar too. We need to escape before he catches us." Austin let out a bitter laugh. Even in her drunken state, all she could think about was how to escape him. Did she really find him that repulsive? Lambert returned in frustration after failing to hail a taxi, only to witness this very scene. That best friend of hers who had just vowed never to have any contact with Austin again was now leaning against Austin, smiling as she freely groped Austin. What a horrifying sight this was. Lambert unconsciously gaped, yet when Austin saw him, not only did they not let go, but instinctively held on even tighter. "Did you call for a car?" Lambert shook his head honestly. "The foot traffic here is heavy, can't hail a cab." Austen grunted and roughly pulled Blanche into a tight embrace with his arm, because if he didn't, Blanche's hands would start pinching upwards. Lambert was genuinely impressed. In front of everyone, being taken advantage of by Blanche, Austen still managed to maintain a calm and composed demeanor. But only Austen knew that the fire he had suppressed for 3 years was now raging fiercely within him. Suppressing his desire with great effort, he pulled out his phone, called for a designated driver, and replied, "Since we can't get a taxi, why not take my car? I've just called a driver, he'll be here soon." Lambert hesitated for a moment, about to say, "This isn't appropriate," when Blanche let out a coquettish whimper and clung tightly to Austen, pouting, "Why did you take so long? I've been waiting for you at the bar forever." At this sound, all 3 people present froze. Chase and Lambert froze in embarrassment, but Austen froze in silence. He didn't say a word, only held her even tighter. Lambert shook his head helplessly at the sight and said nothing more. As he had said, the designated driver arrived quickly. The 4 of them got into the car, Chase in the passenger seat, while the other 3 squeezed into the back. No sooner had they settled in the car than Blanche started acting up again, wrapping her arms around Austen's neck and whining incessantly, "My head hurts so much, Austen. Do you know that?" Austen helped her down, gently patting her back with his hand. Though his movements were somewhat clumsy, there was a tenderness to them. "Can you bear with it for a while? We have hangover medicine at home. I'll give it to you when we get back." Blanche obediently lay in his arms, nodded, then furrowed her brows and closed her eyes. Lambert snorted, finally getting his way, and hastily said, "Blanche won't be going back to your place. Just find some random hotel for her to stay at." Austen, however, disagreed. "Drunk people need someone to watch over them, otherwise if vomit refluxes, there's a risk of choking." Lambert was taken aback. This was something he hadn't considered, freezing instantly. "But you've already broken up now." Austen moved a bit too abruptly, causing Blanche in his arms to stir restlessly. "Austen, stop fidgeting. I can't sleep comfortably." Lambert cursed under his breath. Pathetic. There was no better solution now, and besides, whenever Blanche got drunk, his mind could barely think of anyone but Austen. Even now, he still claims not to like Austen anymore. What stubborn denial. 2 stubborn people together, what a perfect match. Lambert, his head was throbbing too, and he couldn't be bothered with the young couple's affairs. After hastily giving an address, he said, "I'm done with this. Just take me home first, I'm feeling dizzy." Austen naturally agreed. The driver took Chase and Lambert home one by one before finally bringing them back to their own residence. Austen carried Blanche, step by step, towards their shared home. 3 years had passed. How could he have imagined that Blanche's departure back then would last for 3 long years? For 3 years, he had been fantasizing about her return every single moment. So much so that he didn't dare change even a single piece of furniture. Even when the sticky notes lost their adhesive, he painstakingly glued each one back with a glue stick. The moment the door opened, Austen lowered his head and gently placed a kiss on Blanche's cheek, hoarsely whispering, "Blanche, we're home." Blanche was now in a daze, barely catching what he was saying, only vaguely hearing the word home, then smelling the most familiar scent from memory. She instantly melted, clinging to Austen like a dodder vine. "Austen, I feel dizzy." A single sentence sent Austen's reason teetering on the brink. He took a deep breath, his arms trembling as he held her, yet stubbornly refusing to let go. He didn't know if Blanche would scold him for taking advantage when she woke up, but all he wanted now was to care for her, just as she had once cared for him. So, he laid Blanche down on the bed and gently wiped the makeup from her face with a towel. Austen, he had never paid attention to what her usual makeup remover looked like before, but he remembered her saying that sleeping without removing makeup was harmful to a girl's skin. At this moment, all those words she had repeatedly nagged about resurfaced in his mind. As the makeup gradually faded away, the all-too-familiar face appeared before his eyes. This was the person who had tormented him every single day during the 3 years of her disappearance. Austen couldn't help but lean in for another kiss, his breath caressing Blanche's face. Just as he was about to kiss her lips again, he saw her instinctively furrow her brow. It was like a flash of lightning, abruptly recalling him to his senses. Austen immediately sat on the edge of the bed, breathing heavily, but keeping his distance. His gaze remained fixed on Blanche, and after a long, long time, he softly said, "I'm sorry. I'm truly sorry for everything. I'm sorry for neglecting you during our relationship. I'm sorry for not recognizing my own feelings. I'd already fallen in love with you, yet still deceived myself by bringing another woman before you. I'm sorry for all I've done, and for every hurtful word I ever said to you." Perhaps this is the last time I can lean so close to you, perhaps from now on we'll never meet again, but I still want to say, I'm sorry." Alston fled in panic, after murmuring all the words from his heart. This man who wouldn't flinch even if Mount Tai collapsed before him actually had reddened eyes, then turned and left the room. The room was deathly silent, only Blanche, lying asleep on the bed, had a glistening teardrop slide from the corner of her eye. Early the next morning, Blanche woke with a splitting headache. Looked around, and suddenly bolted upright from the bed. This is Alston's bedroom. It was also the room where she had slept for 5 years. Blanche pounded her head hard, but couldn't remember what happened yesterday at all. All she remembered was going to the bar with Lambert, drinking, and then the two of them cursing out Alston. And then, what happened next? Why did she end up at Alston's place? Blanche subconsciously checked her clothes, still intact, and breathed a sigh of relief. After getting out of bed, she carefully pushed the door open. There she saw Alston, a lanky figure, curled up pitifully on the sofa, frowning as if sleeping restlessly. Blanche stared at him for a few moments before circling back to the bedroom to fetch a thin blanket. She had worried that after 3 years away, the thin blanket might not be in its usual place, but when she opened that drawer, the familiar arrangement instantly met her eyes. Along with it came the familiar sticky note. Blanche froze in place all at once. She stared blankly at the slightly faded sticky note that had remained in its spot after 3 years, and suddenly felt her nose sting with emotion. After a long while, she picked up the blanket and gently draped it over Alston. He didn't wake up, and a faint scent of alcohol still lingered around him. Blanche instinctively wanted to leave, but in an instant, he grabbed her wrist. "Don't go." Blanche's heart skipped a beat. Thinking for a moment that Alston had woken up, looking down, though his eyes were closed and his brows furrowed, he accurately grasped her wrist, unaware of what he was dreaming. He kept murmuring, "Don't go, Blanche." No matter what, she couldn't just leave him there like this. Yet his grip was so tight that she couldn't even make him let go easily. So she leaned close to Alston's ear and whispered, "I'm not leaving. Will you let go first?" Alston's body stiffened. Then, as if hearing her, he hesitantly loosened his grip. Blanche felt a surge of warmth in her chest. With a sigh, she got up and headed into the kitchen. Yet all those sticky notes she'd placed in the kitchen had also reappeared exactly where they'd been before. If the one in the wardrobe could still be dismissed as coincidence, this entire array before my eyes could no longer be explained away so simply. Alston didn't tear up a single one. Blanche's eyes gradually reddened. She gazed from afar at Alston lying on the sofa, unsure of the exact emotions stirring in her heart. Suddenly, his phone rang. Alston instinctively furrowed his brows, while Blanche, startled, quickly rushed to his side and answered the call without even glancing at the screen. "Hello," she whispered. "Could you speak more quietly? Alston is still asleep." The words hung in the air, and the other side froze for a moment. Then came a mocking snort. Blanche only then realized something was wrong. When she checked her phone, she froze too. Judith's call. Blanche hadn't expected to receive her call at this moment. Remembering what she just said, her cheeks instantly burned. "That's not what I meant, Blanche." Judith suddenly interrupted her, her tone flat. "Congratulations on ending up with Alston after all." Blanche found her words stuck in her throat, unable to utter a single syllable. Judith ignored her and continued on her own. "That social media post 3 years ago was fake. I photoshopped it." Blanche froze, puzzled by her sudden confession. Then she heard Judith follow up with a self-deprecating laugh. "Because of this, Alston called me who knows how many times last night. Is he really that worried you'd misunderstand? I don't think you even like him that much, coming to ask about it now. Isn't it a bit too late?" The truth was laid bare between them so starkly. It was somewhat awkward, somewhat suffocating. Clearly they hadn't been like this before. In the beginning, Blanche and Judith were actually the first to become close. They used to walk arm in arm to the restroom together, stroll around the playground together, gossip together, watch movies together. When exactly did things start to change? It began when her attention started shifting toward Alston. The three of them became good friends, and everyone said Alston and Judith were a perfect match, which made her start feeling inferior. She even mustered the courage to confess to Judith that she liked Alston, only for Judith to appear the next day holding Alston's hand in front of her. She truly felt as if the sky had fallen and the earth had split open. Before this, Judith and Alston had a good relationship, but it hadn't reached the point of developing romantic feelings. Why Judith would inexplicably fall in love with Alston, Blanche thought to herself, then asked frankly. She knew that perhaps this phone call would be her last with Judith, therefore, she wanted to unravel this 8-year-long mystery. Judith remained silent on the other end of the line for a long moment. Suddenly, she let out a cold laugh and then dropped a bombshell. Because I'm jealous of you, Blanche. Judith met Blanche when the latter was known as the most well-behaved child among their relatives. As for her, no matter how hard she studied, all she ever got from the elders was, "She's quite smart, but just doesn't know how to play her cards right, might have trouble finding a husband later on." In that instant, she understood, because she was a girl, no matter how outstanding her academic performance was, she could never surpass Blanche, who knew how to sweet-talk. She envied her. It had been that way from the very beginning. Judith forced herself to play with Blanche, even though she found Blanche's interests utterly childish, but to learn from her strengths. She believed she could endure it. The more time she spent with her, the more jealous she became. Why Blanche could freely hang out with both boys and girls without hesitation. Why Blanche could get whatever she wanted just by whining to her parents. Why Blanche was rarely harshly criticized even when she made mistakes. Why did Judith lose to her? Looking back now, perhaps her vision was clouded by jealousy, so when she heard Blanche confess her love for Alston, she obsessively sought out Alston. "You're an intelligent man. No one in this world could be more suitable for you than I am. I can support you in your work, and I don't even care whether you love me or not. Our family backgrounds and social circles overlap perfectly." Alston was flipping through a math textbook at that moment, and she recognized it as material only graduate students would study. "So, what exactly are you trying to say?" Judith's words caught in her throat as she struggled to say, "Let's be together." Perhaps Alston was also an odd one. Judith was fully prepared to be rejected, but unexpectedly, he agreed. "All right, from now on, we're officially a couple. I hope you can live up to your words." Judith stared blankly at Alston. There wasn't a trace of love in his eyes, yet his gaze appeared so gentle. So gentle it almost felt artificial. Judith got everything she wanted, yet was never happy, so she ran away. Alston found her at the most carefree moment of her life. "Didn't you promise to marry me after graduation?" Judith looked at the man before her, feeling utterly uncertain in her heart. Did she love Alston? She must have, for this man perfectly matched all her criteria for an ideal partner. Doesn't she love him? Then why did she snatch him back from Blanche's hands? Thinking this, she inexplicably blurted out, "Alston, do you know Blanche likes you?" Immediately, she saw intense emotional turbulence appear in Alston's eyes. He was astonished, shocked, and even somewhat panicked. Judith understood everything in an instant. She wasn't the only one who had been slow to realize. "Go back, Blanche is waiting for you." So Alston obediently returned. A few months later, she saw Blanche's social media post a photo of her and Alston holding hands. They were together. Judith's heart twisted again in an instant. Her jealousy, which she had managed to suppress with great difficulty, rekindled once more. For 5 whole years, she had been like a madwoman, monitoring Blanche's circle of friends. Blanche was happy, and she was miserable. Blanche posted photos of where she and Alston had gone to play, and she would follow suit and go play there too. Blanche did everything for Alston, and she knew it all, keeping each act close to her heart, until 5 years later. When she returned home and met Blanche again in that fleeting moment, Blanche saw Alston with her, the faint pain in his eyes bringing her a twisted sense of pleasure. Judith felt as though her heart were being torn apart, yet deliberately said, "Blanche, long time no see." From that moment on, she decided she would snatch Alston back from Blanche, but things didn't go as smoothly as Judith had hoped. After 5 years with Blanche, Alston's heart had also become fickle. He couldn't distinguish between love and suitability, even though she deliberately twisted his feelings, constantly bringing up how he used to love her. Alston never again broke up with Blanche to be with her like before. Judith had almost resigned herself to failure. Unexpectedly, Blanche left the country on her own. When she heard the news, Judith laughed and cried like a madwoman. She remembered Blanche's official announcement photo of holding hands. So she dug it out and photoshopped her own hand into it. She hesitated for 3 whole days before finally sending the photo, visible to Blanche only. The moment she pressed confirm, Judith broke down completely. She truly believed herself to be the most detestable person in the world, and so she ran away once again. Then, as if retreating into her protective shell, she deliberately forgot everything, until Alston's sudden phone call. "Judith, why did you post that photo?" "Blanche misunderstood our relationship." The worry in his voice wasn't feigned. Alston realized the truth, that he loved Blanche. This secret, delayed for so many years, was finally uncovered by himself. Judith replied coldly, "Oh, so what? I did it on purpose." With that, she hung up the phone. Seeing Alston's calls coming in incessantly, she let out a cold laugh and turned off her phone. Wrapping herself in the blanket, she slept for the entire day, until she woke up again. She hesitantly turned on her phone, one missed call after another popped up on her screen, along with Alston's relentless messages. Most of them were asking why she had done it, and, to explain everything to him, Judith had intended to call and scold him, but the person who answered the phone turned out to be Blanche. Judith spoke simply, her tone indifferent, as if she were telling someone else's story. Blanche, however, was in a daze, unsure how to react. Every memory of Judith had faded in my mind, but gradually became clear again as she recounted them in her gentle voice. It turned out that when she envied Judith for being able to stand rightfully by Alston's side, Judith was also envying her. How ironic, everyone chases after the precious sparkle in others, forgetting how exceptional they themselves are. Blanche closed her eyes, her heart at peace. "I will never forgive you," she said. "So," Judith snorted lightly on the other side, "suit yourself. But I still have to tell you, I was once jealous of you too." Blanche's words struck Judith's ears like a sudden storm. She numbly clutched her phone, unable to react even after Blanche hung up the call. Only after a long while did she suddenly burst into laughter, as if finally understanding. In her laughter, there was relief, guilt, and regret, but no longer the yearning for what could not be or the stubborn persistence. In that moment, she finally made peace with her past. Blanche hung up the phone and turned her gaze to Alston, brows furrowed, his eyes brimming with complex emotions. Alston, when he regained consciousness, the sun was already high in the sky. He suddenly woke with a start and rushed to the bedroom, only to find it neatly tidied up, yet conspicuously devoid of that person's presence. A wave of desolation washed over him. Alston, with heavy steps, he made his way to the kitchen. Intending to pour himself a glass of cold water, his head always throbbed after drinking. Yet, a small bowl sat in the otherwise tidy kitchen. He walked over and immediately recognized it as Blanche's hangover remedy tea. In that moment, he was overwhelmed with grief. Blanche had made that bowl of hangover tea without a single thought in her mind. It was only after she had done it that she realized what she had done. After hastily leaving Alston's house, her heart was still pounding uncontrollably. This night had been truly thrilling. So many unresolved matters that had weighed on her were finally set free after this night passed. Perhaps the only difference between people is a mouth that can speak honestly. Blanche sighed, not thinking much of it, and returned to her own home. Just as she was about to take out her keys to open the door, she saw a man crouching at the entrance. "Felix." Blanche suddenly froze in her tracks. "How could you be here?" Her voice came out hoarse as she spoke. Felix finally staggered to his feet. His eyes were bloodshot, and his entire demeanor tensed up, completely different from the Felix she had known before. "Did you get back together with Alston?" Blanche was taken aback. Without another word, he just took out his keys and opened the door. "Come in first, then we'll talk." Felix instinctively sensed something was amiss, yet found himself powerless to resist Blanche's invitation. He obediently entered, only to see Blanche sitting on the sofa. Her face weary yet wearing an unusually stern expression. An urge to retreat instantly seized him. "I suddenly don't want to know any more. Let's meet next time." He had barely taken a step when Blanche stopped him. "Sit down first." Her expression remained unchanged, but her voice carried an inexplicable chill. Felix stiffened all over, but had no choice but to sit down. "Did you investigate me?" Facing Blanche's cold gaze, he couldn't lie. "Yes." Blanche took a deep breath before asking, "Why investigate me?" Felix lowered his head and said heavily, "Because I like you." Blanche let out a cold laugh. "Just because you like someone, you can investigate them. Just because you like someone, you can lie." Felix was left speechless by the retort. Blanche closed her eyes, slowly pushing down the frustration in her heart. "What else are you hiding from me? If you could investigate where I live, you're clearly not just some ordinary worker like you claimed." Felix stiffened, then ultimately chose to come clean. "DT Agency's owner is my uncle. I came to DT just to gain internship experience." Blanche snorted coldly again. Now, everything became crystal clear. She said, "Felix clearly didn't come from a well-off family, but he pretended so well that he completely fooled her." "Felix, I can't trust you anymore." Blanche's gaze grew complex. Yet the words from her lips were resolute. "You know, what I can least tolerate is deception. Had you told me the truth from the start, we might still have been friends, but you didn't. You chose to build our relationship on lies. I'm sorry, I can't accept this." Felix's face instantly turned deathly pale. "I can explain. It was Uncle who told me not to reveal my identity to others. He was worried people would treat me differently because of it." His voice trailed off as he spoke. Clearly, even he realized something wasn't quite right. Blanche at this moment, her head throbbed so badly she nearly fainted. She hastily stood up and pushed him out the door. "All right, You go out first, let me think this through alone. Felix didn't dare resist and obediently let himself be ushered out the door, yet he still faced the door and whispered, I'm sorry, Blanche, I didn't mean to deceive you. Blanche naturally couldn't hear him. She was just exhausted by the people around her who never gave her peace. After sending the text to request leave, she collapsed onto the bed and fell into a deep sleep within just a minute. She woke up again, startled by the urgent knocking at the door. Blanche gritted her teeth, got up from the bed, and opened the door, only to find Alston holding a bouquet of flowers and Felix, who had clearly not returned all night. The two of them glared at each other, their eyes burning with the desire to fight. Felix being childish was something she could understand, but she truly hadn't expected Alston to get involved as well. Seeing the door wide open, Alston quickly thrust the bouquet of flowers forward and said earnestly, Blanche, I know I've done many wrong things that hurt and upset you. I apologize for all of them. I truly know I was wrong. You can keep scolding me, hating me, but I won't give up, even if you have a boyfriend now. I can still fight for love. Her eyes widened as she swiftly stepped forward to cover his mouth. Felix was stunned and hurried forward to pry her hand away. How could you touch his mouth with your hand? That's disgusting. Alston could bear it no longer and was tempted to shove the flowers right into his mouth. What's it to you? Blanche can be as close to me as she wants. Blanche immediately felt her head throbbing again from their arguing. She gritted her teeth and said, both of you, get out of here. Alston and Felix instantly changed their expressions, quickly softening their demeanor. We were just joking with you. Actually, we get along pretty well. Yeah, not bad at all. Blanche didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The tension she had been holding inside gradually dissipated without her realizing it. Perhaps it was resignation, or some other indescribable emotion. Suddenly, she no longer wanted to dwell on it. Maybe being friends wasn't such a bad alternative if they couldn't be lovers. Who can really predict what the future holds? Let's start over. Blanche smiled, her gaze drifting forward to rest on someone's face. Starting as friends, she hastily added, watching as unprecedented joy instantly blossomed across that person's face before her. All right, let's start as friends. He finally smiled with relief, tears glistening in his eyes. Who said friends can't eventually become lovers? The end.